everybody. My name is Dave Jackson, and you're listening to Tales from the Backlog. This is a video games deep dive review podcast where each week I'm joined by a guest to bring a game out of the backlog, play it, and discuss. My guest today is a friend of the show, a returning guest, one of the hosts of Fun and Games podcast, and a tactical espionage enthusiast. Welcome back to the show, Geoff Moonen.
Thank you very much for having me, Dave. I brought some cardboard boxes. I hope I brought enough for the whole class.
Yeah, cardboard boxes. We might need a couple of those adult magazines that they have in the game, all the accessories.
All the little pieces, all the unexpected items that are necessary in truly realistic, the most realistic military action you'll ever experience in a video game.
100%. Yeah.
Totally.
If you couldn't guess by what we just mentioned or by the title of the episode, today we're going to talk about Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, which is a stealth action game developed and published by Konami for the PlayStation 3 in 2008. Metal Gear Solid 4, of course, was directed by Hideo Kojima, and we'll have more credits as we go through the rest of the podcast today. But of course, the primary name associated with the series, this one too. Although there is a bit of an interesting backstory with Kojima's involvement in this game in particular, which we might get into in a little bit. So before we get too deep into it, if this is your first time listening to the show, first of all, thank you for stopping by. Here's how spoilers work. We are not going to spoil the story of Metal Gear Solid 4 for a while, and believe me, there's a lot of stuff to talk about as per usual with this series, so we'll save a lot of that for the spoiler section. You can check down in the show notes for when spoilers begin. We will also warn you before spoilers start flying. Past Metal Gear episodes of the podcast, there are quite a lot of them now at this point as I'm slowly working through the series. Real quick, Metal Gear Solid was episode 61 with Mick Arcade. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance was episode 82 with Jacob McCourt. Metal Gear Solid 2 was episode 105 with Cade from Gaming Memories. Metal Gear Solid 3 was episode 127 with Katie Lesperance. And Metal Gear for the MSX was a bonus episode on the Patreon series Tales from the Way backlog. That's for the $5 patrons and up. So I'm slowly making my way through the series here, and we're on 4 now.
Yeah, you're making really good progress at this point.
Yeah, a couple of them per year. I only have 2 left after this, and Metal Gear 2 and Metal Gear Acid, I suppose, and a lot of stuff, I suppose.
I was about to say, the PSP has a surprising number of Metal Gear titles. If you consider Portable Ops and Portable Ops Plus as separate things, you've got both assets. You've got the digital graphic novel, which actual thing that I have it is the adaptation of the first run of graphic novels, the Yoji Shinkawa style art for the story of Metal Gear Solid. And there's all sorts of buttons and things you can push to kind of interact with it. Zoom in. You have to find it's got a pop-up video style thing about it.
Nice.
You know, if you do an episode about that, it'd be a very brief one.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe if I get super deep into the Metal Gear stuff, for sure. It's good to know that there is just almost endless Metal Gear stuff, peripheral content out there. Yeah.
It just keeps going. Yeah.
Yeah. But today we're talking about Metal Gear Solid 4, as we said. And if you are either new to the Metal Gear series or don't know anything about what this game is about or what it is, we have some elevator pitches for the top of the show, per usual. My pitch for Metal Gear Solid 4 is Metal Gear Solid is actually really fun to play now, but will Snake live long enough to enjoy it? Geoff, what's your pitch?
Tactical espionage action is given freedom to roam. And boy, does it.
Oh, it roams, baby. Yeah.
It roams in so many directions and in so many ways.
Yes, it does. I played this emulated. I don't have a PS3, and this game, as of the time of recording, is not released anywhere outside of the PS3. So I emulated this. It was a pain in the ass to get it working, but I got it. 16 hours to beat Metal Gear Solid 4. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, that sounds about right. My playtime was a little longer, but I was also pausing frequently to take notes, to get distracted, things like that. I did play it on the PS3. I have both the original and the Legacy Collection version. I played it on the Legacy Collection. It already has all of the patches and stuff loaded. And it took me about, my final count was about 20 hours. But like I said, I think we probably ended up around the same. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm looking at that. It's 27 hours. So it probably was 20 hours when I'm done.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. So I think there are some levels where you could take more time than maybe I did, exploring around, collecting items, stuff like that.
I like to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into it. So we always start with our histories with the game and with the series in particular. And I don't remember how this came up. It came up during some conversation, but I had a little list as I was making my plan to go through the Metal Gear series on the podcast. And I had a list of Metal Gear Solid sicko friends, and you were on that list, Geoff. So how did you end up on that list? Tell everybody about your history with this series.
Well, you probably got it from Matt Storm.
Probably, yeah.
Like, there's a lot of games that Matt and I agree on, and Metal Gear Solid is the one that Matt absolutely just throws up their hands and goes, "That's your thing, honey. I'm not even going to look." I grew up, my older brother had the Nintendo in his room, and one of the games that he had was Metal Gear. So I grew up playing the original NES version. I never got very far.
Yeah.
Again, I was a kid. I would get to play the NES when my brother allowed me to. So that usually meant I was player 2 in something. So I'd get little bits and pieces of it. The music of it just sticks in my head forever. And so that was just kind of a thing that existed. And the PS1 was kind of the first console that was mine in the house, or one that I had regular access to. We skipped the 16-bit generation. And so when magazine covers were advertising Metal Gear Solid, I was like, oh my God, there's more Metal Gear? I loved that. I loved running around in the cardboard box. I loved sneaking up on guards and just I could punch them and they wouldn't notice anything. The music was so cool. I love it so much. And Metal Gear Solid for the PS1, did okay. People seemed to like it.
Yeah, people seemed to think it was all right. Yeah.
People seemed to think it was all right, and I was amongst those people who very enthusiastically thought it was pretty okay.
Yeah.
I played that game into the ground and beyond and back up again. I would hang out at a friend's place who had a Game Shark, and we would break the game on so many levels. We would walk through walls. We were playing things out of order. There's such an odd disjoint. It was the kind of thing where I got all the endings. So I had the bandana. I had the stealth. I had the tuxedo. And I got really good at I was able to sneak C4 onto guards' backs completely unstealthed. This is just what I did.
Yeah.
And then when the PS2 came out, it was a little while before I got it, but I got it in college just in time for Metal Gear Solid 3 to come out. I remember all of the hype for 2, but I couldn't, I played it little bits here and there, and I more than made up for it after 3 came out. And so the original trilogy were games that I lived in. I've played so many times. I've played on all sorts of difficulties. Don't ask me to beat it on European Extreme right now, but I think after delving back into Metal Gear Solid 4, the bug is back, and I need to explore it a little more. And so it's always been a series that I've enjoyed collecting. There's a lot of intangibles and tangibles about the Metal Gear Solid series that appeal to me, and you unfortunately have given me a platform to... Oh my God. I'm going to do my best to be restrained.
All right. We'll see. We'll see about that. So did you play 4 right when it came out then?
A little bit, yeah, because I didn't have a PlayStation 3. Once again, there was a while there where I was 3/4 to a full generation behind on consoles. But in 2008, I was still in college, and a buddy of mine had a PlayStation 3. So we were all excited for Guns of the Patriots. When it came out, he got it. So we sat and watched the install together. And we got to play a bunch of the early stuff. We were passing the controller around on that, as well as seeing bits and pieces of it all throughout. And so a lot of my initial experiences with Metal Gear Solid 4 were that kind of friend secondhand kind of thing.
Yeah.
But plenty of time with it and enough to be in the midst of the hype and backlash and unbacklash and everything else about it. So, and I didn't have a PS3 in my home until 5-6 years ago. So once again, like coming to 3 and then going back to 2, now that there's a PS3 in my home again, I got the Legacy Collection and the original copy, and this was an excellent opportunity for me to really get my own full run around in there. And once we're done recording, I got to go back and I'm going to get some more emblems. It's back.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So for me, as I kind of hinted at earlier, this is my first time going through the series. As you know, all those podcast episodes I mentioned before correspond with my first times playing those games. The only exception is I played Metal Gear Rising first. That's the first. Ghost Babel was the first one I played back when the Game Boy Color was contemporary. I played that. I never beat it. Similar reasons to why you said you never beat Metal Gear on the NES.
Yeah.
But Metal Gear Rising was the first one I played and beat, and I wouldn't say I was like more interested in playing the rest of the series because of Rising, but I fucking love that game. It's one of my favorite action games ever made.
It's bananas. It's great. It's the best of Platinum Games and Metal Gear's manias and excesses mixed together.
Yeah.
It's real good.
They're like peanut butter and jelly for each other, for sure.
Very much so. Yeah, but also Ghost Babel is a very impressive bit of programming for the Game Boy Color. The fact that they, like, now that you've gone back and played Metal Gear Solid, the amount of the feel that they got in there is kind of amazing.
Yeah, I would be interested to revisit that because, again, I was playing that with no context because I played the first Metal Gear Solid game like 2 years ago. So it's really interesting going through this series here for the first time, you know, sometimes 20 plus years after they came out, and we're not that far from 20 years after Metal Gear Solid 4 came out. So we're having a good time going through the series. I've been enjoying them. And then Metal Gear Solid 4 here, like I said earlier, it was kind of surprising to me because I had always just kind of like struggled through the gameplay in the previous 3 games. Like, I got okay at taking guards out, like sneaking up behind them, but Metal Gear Solid 3 introduced the close quarters combat, and it was like a level of complexity that I don't know if it's something to do with like the difference between the PS2 controller and like my Steam Deck, where like the close quarters stuff didn't work the way I was expecting to, like nearly ever. Maybe something to do with analog something or other. Or
actually, my question on that is something that the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 had that I don't know of many other systems, and certainly not the Steam Deck having, are pressure-sensitive buttons.
Yeah, that was what I was just about to say, pressure-sensitive stuff. So the point being, I really struggled with those older games, getting to grip with the controls. I thought using a gun in those games was a chore, like not great, in my opinion. And then like just they introduce a lot of complexity as you go from 1 to 2 to 3, and I like could not really keep up with it. Metal Gear Solid 4 was the first one where I actually felt like very in control of Snake. And if I had a plan to like, all right, I'm going to crawl under this, then sneak up behind this guy, knock him out, then go take this guy out, I could actually execute it in this game. And shooting also felt way better in this game. So it's the first one that I thought was like really actually fun and engaging, like, and satisfying to play. And then the story, I think, is a little bit of a mixed bag here. I'm not mad at it for like the amount of cutscenes, which we'll talk about later, or the amount of exposition, because I already know that that's what I'm in for in Kojima's games in particular. There's just some things that happen with the story later that, like, I don't think the ending of this game is great. I'm a little dissatisfied with where they ended up going with it. But along the way, I think like they tried to mash up the motion of Metal Gear Solid 3 with the conspiracy stuff from Metal Gear Solid 2. And I think they mostly pulled it off. Mostly. Like it was cool on both of those axes to go through. So despite, we'll talk about the ending, of course, probably in a couple hours, but I think that like mostly this was a really good time to go through, basically in line with the rest of the games.
Oh yeah, well, and something about Metal Gear Solid 4 that I always think of is it is most of the earlier Metal Gear Solid games from 4 on back are also interesting tech demos in a way. They are Hideo Kojima likes to use the entire console. when making these games. That's why CQC uses pressure-sensitive buttons. That's why there's things that utilize rumble, that utilize DualShock, that utilize the 6-axis and anything like that. And so Metal Gear Solid 4 shares the same burdens and sins of the PlayStation 3, which is to say it carries everything that came before it. The PlayStation 4 is a very streamlined piece of tech, give or take. Certainly compared to the PlayStation 3, which was, for the time, a massive console, huge. Yeah. When Metal Gear Solid 4 came out in 2008, the PS3 Fat was the only model. The Slim hadn't happened yet.
Right.
And so the only PS3 you had could natively play PS1 and PS2 discs. It had an accessories. You could plug in the PS1 memory cards. You could use everything in some weird convoluted way. And Metal Gear Solid 4 was very much the same in carrying CQC, in carrying the motifs and ideas and weapons and ideas of the previous mini-boss squads and all of these other bits of excess and piece. And so Kojima had been trying to walk away from the series since the second one. And something that I always looked at in Metal Gear Solid 4, even back when it first came out, was when Metal Gear Solid 2 came out, it was a complete experience. And everybody had questions about, well, what do you mean by the AI? What do you mean by the other things that were part and parcel of Metal Gear Solid 2? They weren't meant to be answered. Metal Gear Solid 4 is Hideo Kojima going, be careful what you wish for. I'm going to explain everything. And then I'm going to wrap it up so tightly that we can't go back.
Yeah. Yeah, I had always had that kind of explained to me. You can just like take a look at like how all the sequels work basically in the series. Like, okay, you want a sequel to Metal Gear Solid 1? Guess what? You're not playing as Snake. You want Metal Gear Solid 3? Guess what? It's a prequel. You want Metal Gear Solid 4? Okay, we get what we get here. You want 5? All right, cool. That's an even further back prequel. Like,
yeah, the one, if I had to come up with like one snappy statement to sum up one of the, like a major theme of Metal Gear Solid, it's you are not the hero. And whether that is an emotional thing of, you know, in Metal Gear Solid, Snake isn't, if he had just left well enough alone, we might have been fine. You're not the hero. And yeah, you want the sequel? You're not Snake anymore. You're not the hero you think you are.
Yeah.
You're whatever that is. You're not the hero you think you are.
Yep. Well, we have a lot to dig into, so let's take a bit of a music break here. And when we come back, we will set up the story of Metal Gear Solid 4. The story in Metal Gear Solid 4 was written by Hideo Kojima and Shuyo Murata. It is set 5 years after the events of Metal Gear Solid 2 in the year 2014. And of the mainline Metal Gear Solid series, this is the last one in the timeline, although Metal Gear Rising takes place in 2018. And that's the last one in the canon, to my knowledge. Now,
yes.
Metal Gear Solid has always taken place in a kind of alternate history. A lot of the games, you know, were set during the Cold War or something like that. This one is set in more, you know, modern times. I guess it was the future when this game came out. In this alternate future in the game, the world's economy basically depends on the war economy. The war economy is the world economy. And so there are forever wars being fought, mostly by private mercenary companies. They use the term PMCs, and I will probably do that too, to do most of the fighting. But we're in a war where there is just a world where there is constant war for the sake of war and making money from that. Another thing that is kind of set up in the world of this is that those PMC soldiers are all full of nanomachines that regulate body processes. I was told all the way back in the Metal Gear Solid 1 podcast, if I have any questions about why something works the way it is in Metal Gear, the answer is probably nanomachines.
Nanomachines.
Yep. So nanomachines regulate the soldiers' body processes. They inhibit things that would, reduce their fighting capabilities, and they enhance things to give them combat highs, help them work better together, suppress negative emotions, things like that. This is called the Sons of the Patriots system, and we'll talk about the Patriots a little bit too. So basically, the setting of this game, forever war, and a lot of the levels that you play through are war zones. Unlike, other Metal Gear games where you're infiltrating a base or something that's like not in active combat, right? This game is going through war zones, and one thing that stood out to me is that Snake is not on either side of these conflicts most of the time. Snake is kind of a third party who can help one side or not help one side. Your goal is not really to help one side win the battles or anything like that. But this really sets up like the kind of world that we're living in here.
Yeah, the battles are meaningless, but they are ever present and always happening.
Yeah.
So other Metal Gear games, there's plenty of games where you are the solo operative, the one-man army, the whatever it is that is outside of whatever the conflict that you are affecting is happening. Mm-hmm. So this is the first time where you are in the midst of it. You are the side character in the middle of the greater conflict.
Right. For sure. You play as Solid Snake in this game. Unlike Metal Gear Solid 3, there are multiple Snakes if you're new to the series. This is Solid Snake. It's the same one from Metal Gear Solid 1, voiced by David Hayter in this game. And in this game, you may boot this up and be surprised like me to see that Snake is old in this, even though it's 5 years after the events of Metal Gear Solid 2.
9 years after the events of Metal Gear Solid.
Right. And so Snake was not an old man in Metal Gear Solid 2. Turns out he has this premature aging condition, and it's not, there's one in real life. I forget what it's called. It's not that. It is a mystery condition. No one knows what it is. But that is a thing that is going to be dealt with throughout the game, that Snake is rapidly aging. So everyone in the game is very sensitive about this, and they call him Old Snake. So he has a new nickname in this game. He's not Solid Snake anymore. He's Old Snake.
Yeah, they're very sensitive to his condition, but they call him a nickname like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally fine.
Yeah. So this one of the things that we'll talk about how this plays out, but Snake is kind of on a ticking clock because, Snake is nano-machined up like everybody else, but there's no indication that these are like, live forever nanomachines or anything like that. So we don't know how much longer Snake has.
And nor does he. So
yeah,
there's always that bit of drama, and it definitely, in the way that this game is meant to wrap up the Metal Gear Solid series, or at least Solid Snake's story.
Yeah.
It's one of the many ways that we get the kind of like, no, we're being very final with this.
Right.
How do you think Snake's going to look in another 3 or 4 years if we set the game then?
Yeah,
here it is.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is, so I mentioned like that wanting to hit the emotional notes from Metal Gear Solid 3 again. This is where that lives, is like, this is kind of like a last tour for Snake. He has one last job to do, stuff like that. So this storyline, it feels much more personal with Snake than the previous games. Like he was more of a mentor figure in Metal Gear Solid 2. And in the first game, like they had kind of explored some themes through him and his experiences, but you were never really meant to like wonder what's going to happen to Snake. And like you get an emotional attachment. Like people love Snake. He's a great character. So to see him in danger, that's where the emotional core of this game is.
Right. No, again, challenges the action movie idea.
Yeah.
No matter how much all of the Metal Gear Solid titles challenge the notion of what you would think of the big gun action movie and the hero accompanying that, this one, again, even more of they're removing all of the tropes, the safety scaffolds that hold that up. There is a very genuine, they've switched the protagonist on us once before.
Yeah.
What is going to happen to Snake?
Yep. For sure. So Snake gets one last mission to go on from returning character. And there's so many returning characters in this game.
Everyone comes back. Everybody.
Yeah, basically everyone who's not dead, and even some who might have died, they're back.
Somehow.
Colonel Campbell, who was your guy on the radio giving you instructions in Metal Gear Solid 1, he's back. He gives you a job. So you are to go into a war zone in the Middle East to assassinate returning character Revolver Ocelot, who is the owner of a PMC corporation whose soldiers are... I think he owns all the corporations, so they're basically fighting each other out there.
Yeah,
or they're fighting local militias out there.
I think it's one of those where all of the countries are renting out PMCs to do stuff, and he is the one source.
Yeah, exactly. So it could be conceivable that his two of his would be fighting each other. Here, they're fighting local militia, but they're fucking shit up. And you're sent to go kill him. Also, by the way, it's not exactly Revolver Ocelot. His body is being possessed by the will of Liquid Snake, who died at the end of Metal Gear Solid 1. And if it sounds weird, it's because it is weird. But this has been something that's been going on for 2 whole games now.
Yeah, no, they have... They've laid the groundwork for this, and thus that means it makes sense.
Yeah, right. They pulled off... The way it makes sense. I booted up Metal Gear Solid 4 and saw they call him Liquid Ocelot because he's being possessed by Liquid Snake. And I was like, oh yeah, of course, right. I remember that. That's a thing.
But they also, what's so funny is Metal Gear Solid 2 gives us a very flimsy seeming reason as to why this happens at all. Yeah. Metal Gear Solid 3, sidewise, gives us the reason why it could be happening, and then mentions neither of them when giving us Metal Gear Solid 4. You know, Revolver Ocelot has a piece of liquid Snake. He replaced his lost arm in number 1 with number 2. Are we okay doing spoilers for previous Metal Gears here? I'm very sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So loses his hand in Metal Gear Solid 1, replaces it with the hand from the body of Liquid Snake. It possesses him from time to time. You find out in Metal Gear Solid 3 that he is the son of a medium. So of course ghosts can possess him.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it doesn't need to make sense in general. Metal Gear Solid just needs to make enough sense with itself.
Yeah.
Usually succeeds.
Yeah. So you can see that that's a thing at the very beginning of this game, and you're like, okay, we're running with this.
We're running with it.
Ocelot is out in the Middle East. He has a goal of eliminating this organization called the Patriots, who are introduced in Metal Gear Solid 2. The Patriots are this shadowy organization that kind of controls the events of the world. It controls the media, the flow of information. That was a huge theme of Metal Gear Solid 2, was the rationale behind this. And we had like a good 2-hour spoiler section in that episode, if anyone wants to listen to that. So the Patriots are evil. They're controlling everything, and they want more control, basically, of everything that can be controlled in Metal Gear Solid 4 here. So Liquid wants to kill the Patriots, though. So you kind of get this, I got this mission to kill Liquid, and I was like, well, the Patriots have to go. So couldn't we let Liquid kill the Patriots and then kind of work something out? I don't know. But you're sent on this mission to go take him out. It's the kind of thing where like everybody's got motivations that are like, I don't know, I could understand why, before learning why, of course, but I could guess and understand why Liquid might want the Patriots gone. Yeah.
And no, everybody has sensible enough motivations, ones that make absolutely no sense. Because there's also, everybody's playing things close to the vest, and no matter how much Liquid Snake has taken over Revolver Ocelot, I don't think has known whose side he's on since he was 20.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
and he's a very old man now.
Yeah, and he loves Snake, or he loves Snake's father, I suppose. He does. Yeah. Too many snakes, too many bosses in this series. So the one of the things that the Patriots are trying to do, which makes it even more important to wipe them out, is we mentioned those soldiers all have nanomachines that control their emotions, control their physiology, basically. The Patriots want to control those nanomachines as well, because that would kind of make like this perfect system for them. If the soldiers are products in the war economy, money makers, then they're going to make them the most efficient money makers possible and make this perfect machine, basically. And we don't want that. We don't want the Patriots to literally control everyone's emotions and their free will and all of that stuff as well.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. I think we should take that down some way or another. But of course, everything's connected.
Yeah. But the Patriots already control so much of the world's systems that there's a good quote here from Colonel Campbell earlier that's kind of something they want to plant the seed really early in the game, that they say, in this world, peace is an equilibrium made possible by the war economy. Breaking the current system would cripple the information economy, leading to the end of modern civilization. So it's not as simple as just wiping the Patriots out. There are, it would be like a total collapse of logistics around the entire world and information flow in general if the Patriots were just deleted. So it's a little bit of a delicate thing that you have to walk, a delicate tightrope, we'll say.
Yes, the Patriots were sort of established in Metal Gear Solid 2 as being involved in a lot of the free flow of information. And so if by Metal Gear Solid 4, much of it has become the war economy and that becomes a larger piece of it, you remove that much of the heart of something.
Yeah.
How can the rest of the body survive? It seems, it is both too big to fail and too large to surgically remove without damaging everything else. It's the kind of idea that we can all, I'm sure everybody can sit there and go, yeah, we don't want anything controlling all of our bodies, but also going, I don't know what will come next. This isn't the way.
Yeah, it's the situation where, obviously the Patriots are evil, but wiping them out would make things drastically worse right away. So you do have that little pause of okay, if we wipe them out, how do you, it's going to set civilization back hundreds of years if it's just a clean delete, So how do you actually do this? And that's something that I had fun thinking about as we went through the story, and just kind of they explained more of how the Patriot system works and that stuff.
Yeah, and you got to hear a number of different perspectives about how people feel about that, the benefits of such a system, or why people would want something like it in the first place. There's always that idea, the argument of technology versus experience versus organic versus digital. And there's advantages and disadvantages to all of them. And there's always the worry about taking them too far. And so that is one of those greater themes that has been explored in previous titles and is brought very much to the fore with this one.
Yeah, for sure. So those are kind of the two concurrent plot lines. We have the plot line with the Patriots and what they want, with what Liquid Ocelot wants, and then we have the storyline with Snake. Also back in Metal Gear Solid 4, Raiden is back. He's not a playable character, but he is back. He is a major character in here, probably much to the delight of everyone who is mad at Metal Gear Solid 2. Raiden is back.
Well, did you ever watch the trailer, one of the earlier trailers for Metal Gear Solid 4, the director's chair one?
Oh, for Metal Gear Solid 4, no.
Yes. So there was one that, I think it was one of the earlier announcement ones, that doesn't have a ton of gameplay, but it kind of sets the scene for, there is a Metal Gear Solid 4 coming. It's going to be a lot more open. That's where the origin of No Place to Hide that I know of comes from, as I know of. Mm-hmm. And it had kind of a back and forth between Snake and Raiden for a chair that said main character.
Uh-huh.
So whether or not that said definitively to people that, no, Raiden's not going to be here, or don't forget about Raiden, it was there. And so neither Snake nor Raiden looked in that trailer the way they look in the final game. They looked how people think of them, which was another one of those, the way that they pulled the rug out from under us with Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah, Raiden is, he's been enhanced, we'll say, in Metal Gear Solid 4. He's closer to his Metal Gear Rising design than Metal Gear Solid 2 design in here. He's, there's a part where he gets in a sword fight with one of the villains, and it's very clear that he's not completely human anymore. So
yes, he's got the gear.
Yeah,
he's got that ninja gear. Only blondes are allowed to be the ninja.
Yeah.
I thought about that, and then I was like, wait a minute, Frank Yeager, was he blonde? Yes, he was. Oh my God, only blondes can be ninjas.
It works. Yeah.
It works. Internal logic.
Yeah.
Just has to make sense with itself.
story themes, I think we've touched on some of these, but want to kind of introduce these, open them up before we talk about them again in the spoiler section. But this game has a lot to say about, its version of the war economy, the military-industrial complex. There's a gameplay tie-in with the war economy that I think is like kind of interesting to see, and like I don't particularly think it's that deep if you think too much about it, which is kind of how Metal Gear works sometimes. Just Kojima's like, hey, we can tie this in. Let's do it. So there's that. There's the Patriots and like their want for control versus the free will of the people. With those enhancements to the soldiers, there's a good focus on like transhumanism and like enhancing people in this game, which I think is pretty cool. Like the benefits and drawbacks of that in ways that we haven't mentioned yet, specifically with that SOP system in here.
Yeah, it brings up a lot of cyberpunk style arguments without being presented in any way like you would expect a cyberpunk story to be. But it is those questions of what determines humanity, what determines ownership, what determines, the idea of, the nanomachines are in your blood, but are you in control of the nanomachines?
Right. Exactly. And specifically, like the Metal Gear Solid series has always focused on soldiers as people and how they're kind of manipulated by whoever's giving them orders and how they're seen as expendable. And this is just one other way that they show this. Obviously, like these the PMC soldiers are in forever wars. So their life is almost meaningless to the people who control it. But then you have like this nanomachine tech that's like, okay, so we're going to take away all the negative consequences from fighting. There's going to be no PTSD. There's going to be no bad feelings about what you're doing. There's going to be, pain inhibitors, and it's going to help you work with your squad mates. So like positive things for their job as a soldier. But then if you think about those things for them as like humans and as people, then you start to get into like that dark side of that technology too. And this game really hones in on that, because on the surface you'd be like, oh, they can't feel pain. Is that a good thing for them or not?
Yeah, that is always the question. Too much of a good thing, width and breadth of experience. And even since Metal Gear Solid 1, there is the talk of these kinds of soldiers, this kind of enhancement, the next generation special forces with gene therapy, the Sons of the Patriots with the nanomachines, and even the VR training that we, the players, play in Metal Gear Solid 1, in Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance. All of this comes to the idea of, again, you are not the hero, of all of this comes together on, we're making the soldiers more and more like the experience that we, the gamer, has.
Right.
We can play as many war games as we want. We can play Call of Duty. We can play America's Army. We can play all of these things that are used as military recruitment tools, as well as just other good old fun, get on chat and blow some stuff up kinds of things. You can die a million times and you never feel the pain. Yeah. You only feel adrenaline as people are yelling at you. You never feel the danger of combat. The nanomachines makes the characters in the game you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it is basically taking away all of the dangers and all of the negative emotions and everything like that from them. I mean, aside from being killed instantly or something like that, everything else is basically removed. So, yeah.
Pretty much.
One other thing about the story is the presentation of this game, we'll say. This game, I think, is pretty infamous for the amount of cutscenes out there in the game. I looked up, so my playthrough took me 16 hours. I looked at the all cutscenes video on YouTube, and it's 9 hours long. So my playthrough was over 50% cutscene by volume, which, again, I knew was coming, and I made sure. Everyone told me, hey, when you think you're about to beat this game, make sure that you have 2 hours of free time, because you can't save in the middle of it.
Nope.
And make sure you can just sit and watch the whole thing. So I made sure. How do you feel about this as, someone that you have a lot going on, a game that has this many cutscenes? Even for, I know you like some of the Yakuza games too. Those have long cutscenes too.
Oh, yeah.
Even by games with long cutscene standards, Metal Gear Solid 4 is at the top of that.
Yeah. And Metal Gear Solid carries the burden of being one of the earlier heavily cinematic games.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid for the PS1 does have a lot of cutscenes. You couldn't pause through those. If you pressed start, you'd skip to the next one. I appreciate once you started being able to pause during cutscenes, a weight I didn't realize was on my shoulders went away forever. It's great. But you're right. It's very long. It's a lot. So on the one hand, yeah, it's a little inconvenient, but it wouldn't be Metal Gear Solid without it. I have spoken before on other podcasts and in other mediums and in other conversations about how games are, games as movies is such a weird thing because the exciting parts of movies are cutscenes. And what we play when we play games is typically the necessary actions to get to those cool parts that if you filmed them are boring as hell. They're just fucking boring. So we play those exciting parts so that we can feel them, that we do them. And that's why they're exciting. And I would argue, Hideo Kojima very infamously wanted to be a filmmaker. And thus, there's like, oh, of course the cutscenes are long. He wanted to be a filmmaker. He's making his movies. But I would argue something even more interesting in Metal Gear Solid 4 in particular. It's not just a movie. It's a theater company. You're watching the performances. And because of the way that the game is presented, there's so many different layers in how cutscenes can play out.
Oh, yeah.
And there's, a little bit about myself. I am a voice actor, but I'm also a stage actor, and I've done a lot of immersive theater, which is site-specific stuff.
Yeah.
You can have a script. You do have improvisation that goes on, but people are wandering around, and so they see what they see and they get what they get. And so the cutscenes in Metal Gear Solid 4 remain a little bit interactive.
Yeah.
So you can't tell the actors to stop doing something, but you can kind of move around and see what they're seeing. And so whether or not that's a great thing or not, it's an interesting one, and it feels like Metal Gear Solid 4. I also appreciate that with the power of the PlayStation 3, we don't have to cut to a codec screen every single time a codec conversation happens. It's amazing how much more streamlined this game feels to me because of all of those hours that I have spent calling everybody on my support team on codec because I wanted to know what they thought about every situation, because sometimes you get fun dialogue. It encourages the exploration. But all of that to say, yeah, the cutscenes are long, but that's part of Metal Gear Solid, and I don't begrudge them that, and I love that I can pause. That part makes it tolerable. Yeah,
being able to pause is great, for sure. The cutscenes do have that layer of interactivity. It's a cool part of the presentation here. I thought it was really nice, for someone who played this game right when it released, it would have been 10 years after Metal Gear Solid 1 came out.
Yes.
So a lot of the cutscenes will the dialogue will refer back to something from a previous game, and you'll get a button prompt to press X to bring up this kind of flashback. Like Snake is briefly remembering this scene from Metal Gear Solid 1. And that helped me to connect dots to characters I haven't seen in a few years. So that's one of the things that you mentioned there.
It's a streamlined flashback. We don't have to cut to footage from the game. We don't have to go what are they really thinking? You just hit that, and it's just it brings us all together.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing I just wanted to say, since you brought it up, I've heard this critique of Kojima out there that he is making games like this because he wants to be a filmmaker more than a game maker. And it's obviously there's some truth to that because there's been that cinematic approach since 1998 in these games. But to say that that's the primary concern when making these, or the only concern, and even into Death Stranding and stuff, I think that's a pretty reductive idea of his creativity, because
Agreed.
I've always, ever since starting this series up, I've always thought that he's been really, really underrated as a gameplay designer, just thinking of cool things that you can do to interact with these games in ways that other games on these systems wouldn't let you do. Nobody had thought, and I'm not even talking about the gimmicky, look on the CD case for the radio frequency to call someone. I mean actual gameplay mechanics. They're just cool ideas. And even into Death Stranding, it's like the friendlier version of QWOP or something like that, like walking the game. Like I legitimately think that he has lots of creative gameplay ideas too. So to say that, all he wants to do is make movies, that's why there's so many cutscenes. Like, I think that's a pretty reductive idea of the creativity that goes into these.
I agree. And it shows the ambition of Kojima and the team that he works with, where they're writing down ideas every single day. There was definitely directives of like, write down a new idea every day. We'll try them out. But also even to an advantage on the like, oh, he wants to make films. When Metal Gear Solid came out in 1998, power of the PlayStation 1 was being heavily utilized for cutscenes and full motion video and loading those things up and going between them, and they were only so good. Mm-hmm. Go back and watch some. Oh boy. But there was a decision made early in development that all of the cutscenes in Metal Gear Solid would use in-engine graphics. And the fact that Snake just has a polygon face that just kind of nods a little as he talks, you don't see a mouth move or anything, you forget it quickly. It's like watching a puppet show. Yeah. A lot of actors who have been on Sesame Street or worked with the Muppets find themselves very quickly forgetting the puppeteers are there and just looking at the Muppets. Mm-hmm. By having that, you create a verisimilitude. You create the worlds that we're all believing in here. And so sometimes bringing the desires of cinema into wild, ambitious ideas of gameplay and everything else, I agree. It is a very reductive statement.
Yeah. There are a lot of cutscenes here.
There are a lot of cutscenes in conclusion.
I agree. If someone were to say, I think this game has too many cutscenes and I think the ending cutscene is too long, I would be like, yeah, I think you're probably right. But that being said, I was never bored watching these cutscenes. I was never bored by the story or like... I never had this game figured out. Like, I never knew where this story was going. I think that's one of the great strengths of these stories is that if you're in on like the premise of the story, you're going to be taken for a ride. And so that ending cutscene is an hour and 21 minutes long, which is, first of all, incredible that I will not sit down and watch a movie because I think it's too long, but I will watch the ending cutscene of Metal Gear Solid 4. Little thing about my brain.
Same.
But during that hour and 21 minutes, I was never bored watching it. So like, how much can I really complain about it? I was in. I wanted to see, there's some big conversations that happen in that last cutscene, and I wanted to see them. So could it have been 20 minutes shorter? Maybe. But like, at the end of the day, I have some issues with the story, but the amount of cutscenes is not really one of them. I'll say that. Yeah,
it's indulgent, certainly.
Oh yeah.
But and like you said before, Dave, there's plenty of stuff in Metal Gear Solid that there's plenty of deep things that happen. And there's plenty of things that go, oh wow, that's so deep. Then you think about it for 3 seconds and you go, nah, they just threw that in.
Yeah.
But something that Metal Gear Solid as a series, Metal Gear Solid 4 as a title, is almost entirely is earnest.
Mm.
There is indulgence in these long cutscenes and such a long ending, but also there is this feeling of like, I need to say this. And so sometimes it does come off like a 12-year-old who is just discovered this concept and is so excited about it and is giving you 101 thoughts on it.
Yeah.
But they're just presenting it so earnestly. And it's among so many other cool things that you're just like, go off, kid. This is great.
Yeah, I usually ask on the Metal Gear Solid episodes, I always ask the guests, because these games have this like super serious conspiracy, trying to tell deep stories about the war economy and, all of these deep themes to varying degrees of success. And then there's also like, there's a fucking vampire in this game. And
not a vampire, but totally a vampire.
But definitely a vampire. Like,
definitely a vampire.
We know he's a vampire. There's cyborg ninjas, and there are octopus bosses with camouflage, skin suits, and
there's telepaths with psychokinesis. There's a man covered in bees.
Yeah,
he's fighting you with bees.
Exactly. So I always ask the question, like, do you think that Kojima is in on the joke on this? And I think that you already gave your answer here, where like he thinks that this is cool, but also like, if you were to ask him like, did you have fun making this? He'd be like, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say he's in on the joke, but he doesn't always know what joke he's in on because he's in so deep and very earnest. I would say that Metal Gear Solid as a series moves like anime, being made by a Japanese view, playing with American comic book action figures.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like even the original setup in Metal Gear Solid was made using Lego. Like you have to be able to put a little camera and do these environments work. It's action figures. But it's very American hoorah, big muscle Rob Liefeld style, done telling anime thinking stories.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say it's earnest. He's in on it. He doesn't always realize it, but he is.
Right. One other thing to mention, I guess, since we were kind of talking about presentation, I think the music in this game is really good, as with most of the series. I think I said in the first game I didn't love the music, but as I've gone through the series, I've grown to love the approach to music in Metal Gear games. So
yes.
The music is primarily credited to Harry Gregson-Williams, who's a name that comes up in at least some of the games before. Nobuko Toda has a credit, and there are actually a lot of people who did like minor things in the soundtrack as well. I thought that this was an interesting start to the game. When you first boot up the main menu theme is not the heroic sounds of the previous games. It kind of echoes how old and probably tired Snake is. It's kind of like an abrasive track that starts the game up. And then if you let that track play for a couple minutes, it will start to pick up and get into the action a little bit. But I thought that set the tone really well. This song is called Old Snake. It's just kind of like, it feels worn out. And then it gets into the action, kind of like you do.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those ways that, whether intentionally or not, there's very fun aspects of the game where the music works with the way the gameplay feels, or the gameplay is about how the lighting or the whatever else. And so the music takes its own big swings of connecting those. And I think you're right. It feels closer to the title screen for Metal Gear Solid that has a little bit of a drone, an unsure quality. Mm-hmm. But that one's far less abrasive than this one. When booting up the game, I have to make sure the volume's not on too loud because there's a little bit of a weird, just like whoosh that's jarring.
Yep. It's one of those where you turn it on and be like, this is super quiet. So you turn it up loud and then it comes in and it's a lot.
And then it's powered by THX and you're screwed.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I would agree that the approach on things, it got more refined from Metal Gear Solid onwards. I remember the Metal Gear Solid 3 was really the game where I first noticed, like, the music always feels like itself, but there was like cool layers and pieces that were like, oh, now they're working it together. Yeah. And Metal Gear Solid 4 being so much of a moving forward while looking back, bringing some of those themes back, that whenever old music popped up, I could not have pulled it out of a hat. I could not have won a pub trivia quiz about these songs, but I knew them. And I knew when they came from, too. So that speaks to the power of those melodies and those tracks. So, hell yeah.
I guess I started to notice it in 3. It's probably in the earlier games too, but this series does a great job with leitmotif and bringing back those things and recontextualizing those based on the situations. So definitely agree.
Yeah.
Ruki has something to say about the music. So let's listen to some and then we'll come back and we will talk about gameplay in Metal Gear Solid 4. Okay, gameplay in Metal Gear Solid 4. Third person, as always, third person stealth, third person shooter. I kind of said earlier at the top, I think this is the first one where the game actually felt like I could do the things that I wanted to do in there. Whether it is being stealthy, whether it is like surviving after I get caught in stealth. I felt like this game was a lot less annoying once I got caught because you could just shoot everyone. I mainly tranked people, but
Same.
It just felt like in the earlier games, I felt like soldiers respawned infinitely, whether that's true or not. That's how it felt. And I don't love, when you get caught, the classic, like the timer starts ticking down and it's like, okay, go hide in a locker for 5 minutes. Like, I didn't love that. I would often just like reload the beginning of a level, the last checkpoint, if I got caught. In this game, I didn't do that. I found that it was much more fun to get myself out of those like scramble situations in here.
Yeah, there's always been a lot of tools at your disposal, whether in your inventory or in the environment, for sneaking as well as for unsneaking, I guess. And Metal Gear Solid has never been a good action game.
Yeah.
It's a very fun stealth game. It's even kind of an interesting puzzle game. And it is a bit of an action game. But there again, it actively discourages you from going in guns blazing. I got the FAMAS in Metal Gear Solid. I very rarely used it in situations. Why would you give me an automatic weapon when I'm not supposed to run around guns blazing?
Yeah.
So Metal Gear Solid 4, they've added enough things and enough pieces from previous games and they're going on. I agree. I've always had a lot of fun trying to get out of those scrapes, even if it was hide in the locker, because I just wanted to see how far I could take it. But no, the organic feeling in this where, if no one calls for reinforcements, there's a finite number of troops to deal with. If you knock them out and you keep them away from somebody waking them up, you're going to be okay on these things. It felt a little more grounded there. And so, I understand why you would be like, all right, let's see if I can get out of this. What happens if I go over here? And so it's all of those genres and pieces that Metal Gear Solid touches. They polished them, each one of them, and they kind of locked them in a little bit better. I started finding a lot of fun in gunplay and in sniping and in tranking in Metal Gear Solid 3, but Metal Gear Solid 4 lets you actually use the right analog stick to look around a little bit better. So that also felt a lot better in the more stealthy sections. It felt less like the game was fighting me. And I think it makes it a far more enjoyable gameplay experience for that.
Yeah, 100%. It's also the first one where like all of them would have situations where you have to fight. Like maybe it's not a boss fight, but maybe it's just a level where like there is no stealth in this. Yeah. You have to fight your way through this. And this is the first one where I was like, I'm a master. I can take care of this. No problem. Not to say it was never difficult or challenging, because it often was, but it was the first one again in this series where it's like, okay, you're in this level. There's like 20 enemy soldiers. You're going to have to fight. And I was like, okay, I can do this. No problem. Which is not how I felt in the previous games.
Yeah, a lot of the arenas of previous Metal Gear Solid games were, whether by necessity, by design, whatever, far more enclosed.
Yeah.
This one, even in sections where, they know you're there. They're looking for you. You're fighting 20 smaller enemies or one big obstruction or anywhere in between. You felt like there's more spots for you to sneak around, to track somebody, to follow them.
That's a great point. Yeah, the level design, and I think it probably comes down to like the PS3 could just do a lot more with levels than the PS2, because in the PS1, it's like the old games, like you said, they're in enclosed spaces most of the time. Like it's room to room in those old games.
And I mean, this one is... Did you play Twin Snakes on the GameCube or the PS1 version?
PS1.
So, case in point, the GameCube remake of Metal Gear Solid 1, Twin Snakes, allows you gameplay stuff from Metal Gear Solid 2, and it shows just how small the game is sometimes. The fight with Revolver Ocelot, where you're running around and there's like a cat and mouse going on, and you got to watch his bullets and everything else. If you've got first-person view and a trank gun, you hide behind a pillar, he's done in 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And so...
I've heard that.
Yeah. And which is all well and good. And trust me, after dealing with Metal Gear Solid on the PS1 so many times, the first time I got to do that on the GameCube, catharsis, felt great.
For sure.
But the way that it all, and you're right, it was very room to room. And I know, I haven't read any interviews on it, but I do know that they took a lot of advantage of the Cell superprocessor structure that the PS3 had. They wanted to have a lot of simultaneous things happening. Yeah. So there is that, like, let's give you a big space. Let's give you factions to work with. Let's give you a number of soldiers. The way that, on the PS2, Snake Eater remembered how you took out every single soldier for that walk through the river with the Sorrow. If you killed a guy, had a vulture eat him, and then killed and ate the vulture, the ghost remembered that. But it still feels like on the PS3, they went so much bigger.
Yeah.
It still had more.
Yeah. So instead of having like room to room, or in Metal Gear Solid 3, it was like section by section of like these outdoor spaces.
Right.
In 4, it is just this big outdoor space with like way fewer loading screens in the meantime. So like the first several levels that you go through are these like bombed out city streets, and they have buildings that you can go into, and you can climb up to the top floor, and then maybe you can jump across the rooftops, or maybe there's a ladder and you can go across. And so they just introduce like more ways that you can approach situations too. So like if there's a firefight going on down in the street, you can go down and be part of that firefight if you want. You can sneak up behind soldiers on one side and take them out. And like you can move from the alleyways to the alleyways, or maybe there's a path up on the rooftops that will allow you to bypass most of that. So I think that probably contributed to like a better flow for me going through the levels as well.
It was the first fully three-dimensional way of doing this. Metal Gear Solid's always been a three-dimensional series, but 1 and 2 are flat.
Yeah.
There's stairwells, but that's just window dressing.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 2, maybe a little more. Metal Gear Solid 3 brought in some slopes, brought in some things, but Metal Gear Solid 4 is really the one where, you can go in and out of buildings and it doesn't load them. You can pop up all around, and there is so much more free roam in that. And that, again, it could have the same square footage, but because you're now talking in cubic feet and not square feet, it is so much bigger.
Yeah. And there's just a lot of detail in the places too. In those levels, there's one level where you're going through like this big, I want to say it's a hotel or something like that. Like those are just like much more interesting spaces to be in than the previous games.
Yeah, and that one was a fairly enclosed space, and yet it still was enormous. It was voluminous even.
Right. Because like you're in a firefight in that space, but that firefight spills from room to room to room to room with like in a continuous thing. It's not like you kill all the enemies in this room, then a loading screen, go to the next room, kill all of them. It's just like a continuing kind of like a spectacle thing. It's like a scene in an action movie, basically. So I don't know. This game is just a lot more fun to play. And I think a lot of it does come down to they just had better technology to make these spaces more realized, to, the game engine feels better to play in than it used to. A lot of it just feels better. It makes me really excited to play Metal Gear Solid 5 once I get there, because I've heard nothing but good things about the gameplay in that game.
Oh, absolutely. Well, because there again, one of the big, like, hashtags, keywords, I would say, of the design philosophy of Metal Gear Solid's gameplay is consequence. Psycho Mantis reads your memory card and tells you how you've been playing. This one, things that you've been doing carry through. If you tranked somebody, another soldier can find them and wake them up. They might not wake up on their own. They might not it would take less time. Or, you don't just cross over into another space and suddenly they forget you exist. It's continuous.
Right.
And so they continue that idea of consequence. And Metal Gear Solid 5 also takes that into new technology, into new ideas too. And so, I'm excited to hear what you think.
For sure. It'll be on the podcast in about a year and a half or something like that. But I'll hit you up.
I can wait.
Speaking of consequences, one new thing that's introduced in here is you don't find a pistol, a shotgun, a sniper rifle like you used to in the old games. There's a lot of guns that you pick up. Down soldiers will almost always drop their weapons, so you can go pick them up. And this game has a kind of a merchant you can call. His name's Drebin, and he sells you weapons. And this is like that tie-in with the war economy thing, where if you kill more people, or if you spare more people, the prices will change in the shop, and what's available might change as well. This feels like a convenient way to have a character represent something in the story. I couldn't tell any difference in practice, like whether I killed a bunch of people or whether I, tranquilized a bunch of people. I just bought, whatever the price was. It never really affected me in a way that really mattered.
I'm fairly certain that if I took their weapon and I knocked them out, they didn't have the weapon when they got back up.
Yeah.
So that was always fun.
Well, but there's like that impact on Drebin's shop where they try to make this, this commentary about like, hey, you cause more chaos. It's good for me. I'm the war economy guy. And I was like, I don't really know about that.
It does make for a nice and convenient way of what do you do with all these guns?
Yeah.
And having a little bit of hiding some fun, goofy things in there. It is the kind of thing of, okay, if you are in an enclosed thing, like the previous Metal Gear Solid titles, it makes sense that the one force you're dealing with has standard issue stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody's using the same automatic. Everybody has the same sidearm. Everybody is using 5.56ers or whatever it is. But with a lot of PMCs, everyone's got different shotguns. Everyone's got different heavy artillery going on. So this is a way for it to all be there. And for you to kind of pick your favorites.
Yeah.
You
can
choose
definitely
your
pick
loadouts.
your favorites.
Yeah, I do love the backpack system of Metal Gear Solid 3, but it is a lot. This is a very nice streamlining of it. And Drebin is another streamlining therein. Look, there was plenty of times where I was just trying to take things out non-lethally. I needed to keep buying anesthetic rounds. I'm okay with this. This was fine. And I appreciate it was another way that they could make use of, again, using the whole console, the whole technology. There were discounts on certain days.
Yeah.
The first time I started out Metal Gear Solid 4 was a Sunday. And when I got to Drebin and I turned it on and it's just like, oh, right, sales. It's wild. And there is something to be said, whether it was intentional or not, about having that kind of, pedestrian excitement about wholesale slaughter.
Yeah. Yeah. Weapon sale. Yeah. Hell yeah.
Oh, man. I'm like, maybe I'll finally buy that weird, I'll get the Mazanagant. This is going to be great. That's how I got it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's a sale on, so I can get the non-lethal sniper rifle because don't ask me how that works, but there's a non-lethal sniper rifle.
It shoots shrink rounds. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
But it's also for Metal Gear Solid 3. So if you don't know that, that's fine. But if you do, you're like, I want the ENDS sniper rifle.
Yeah. So there's that. I think the last thing that I need to talk about, and this is a Metal Gear Solid tradition, but the boss fights are like puzzly. They all have a gimmick to them. They're
an event.
Yeah, they're an event. There's some that are like more like a regular enemy that has better guns or better capabilities or something, but there are some that are like legitimate gimmicks and puzzles to figure out, like maybe you need a specific item to beat them or something like that. And so the bosses that I enjoyed in Metal Gear Solid 4 are the ones that are kind of just like a super soldier, we'll say, with no special gimmick. Like maybe you have to find them. Maybe they're hard to find. Maybe you have to lure them out with something or something like that. Like I enjoyed those. The ones where it's like you need this one key item, I hated those because I always forgot about the key item. And I had to look them up every time.
That's fair. Also, by the time this game came out, the game guide economy was also thriving, so there might have been a bit of that. And the thing, too, with bosses in this series, there's gimmicks, and as the games went on, and as the encounters got bigger, there were so many different approaches to taking them down. There are definitely those choke points of like, no, you need to use this one specific thing. I don't hate them, but I like those least. But those times where, look, there were one or two fights where if I wasn't playing the game for us to talk about it, I would happily take my time. I'd learn the arena again. I'd like get it under my feet, under my fingers, and love it. And then sometimes it was just like, what thing do I hide behind, and what weird AI exploit is actually programmed into the game for me to use to just do this? It takes slightly longer in reality, but it's only going to take me one try to do it. Yeah. All right, you're going down.
Yeah, like the ones where it's just like, this is just a tough enemy. You need to figure out how to hurt them without the key item. I thought those were decent puzzles to try and figure out.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's one that's invisible, or like functionally invisible because it's in a big snowstorm. And I had a really good time with that fight because it's just like, how do I get to a way where I can find them, get a good shot off in this these terrible weather conditions. Like I enjoyed that.
Right. And you have a means of like night vision or heat vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's battery powered. So you have to
Right.
turn it off to recharge it. And I found myself in a lot of situations like, almost got it, almost. And then my vision would start to get blurry because the battery was dying.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I got to find somewhere to like hide to charge that up or just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, sometimes your grand strategy falls apart in an instant. And that's exciting to me.
Yeah, it can be, for sure.
It can be. It can be.
A lot of the fights also call back to previous boss fights in the series, whether it's the same character or whether it is a character who is kind of aping one of the older characters. So if you remember something about that old character or that old boss fight, it might aid you in how to fight the new one, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool. It kind of rewards that knowledge for previous players to, or at least like, a returning character, you already know what their deal is if you ever have to fight them. So there's a character who's functionally immortal, so you're going to have to do something special to defeat them, we'll say.
Yes.
Yeah. Stuff like that.
Yeah. And there is something nice about you do still have your codec. Like, as I referenced before, whenever I would fight bosses in previous Metal Gear titles, I would call everybody on my contacts list during a boss fight because they might have helpful gameplay tips or they might have just strange insight or they might say something really funny.
Yeah.
And so your contact list is much smaller in this game, which is, again, a more streamlined situation. So it's worth it to check in and call a few times to maybe be like, what's working here, what's not working. And it's a spot where they will... If in a pinch where it's like, I don't know what to use, they might finally go, wait a minute, don't you have this?
That might have been it. Because my gripe was, and I had the same gripe one time maybe in Metal Gear Solid 3, where they will give you a key item. It is not useful for anything for hours of gameplay. It might be the majority of the game itself. And then suddenly you get into a boss fight and that one item that you have forgotten that you have is the only way to defeat the boss. And so I had forgotten that you can call people for tips. That might be the solution for that.
I believe I know which boss from Metal Gear Solid 3 you're talking about. I did have to look up that solution as well way back when. And that one also was a little difficult to make some calls. This one, on the other hand...
True, yeah.
Yeah, you are never locked out in quite the same way.
Right. So at least there's that. That was my biggest complaint with some of the boss fights. I would get into and be like, I feel like I'm following the instructions of like what they want me to do, but nothing is working. What the fuck do I do here? So
yeah. And I will say something that's nice of Metal Gear Solid 4, again, going into 4, both originally and now again, I bring a lot of my preconceived notions of the previous games into it. They're much kinder about when you can save.
Yeah.
So after the very long cutscene, you start the boss fight, you can save the game and you will start in the boss fight.
Yeah.
And so there were definitely times where I'm like, I need to put this down and walk away. And I didn't feel like it was as big of a deal as it was in previous titles.
Yeah. I think... You correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there are like mid-boss checkpoints in Metal Gear Solid 4.
There's certainly mid-cutscene checkpoints a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I think there are some of the boss fights that have a number of phases. I think there are, you can't save at them, but there are stress relief checkpoints of if you're just going at it. So yes.
There were a couple where I would like die a bunch of times and it was a relief to know that I didn't have to do the earlier phase.
Oh my gosh,
with most of those, like if you did the earlier phase once, you can probably do it again, but like I don't really want to do it again. I've already shown that I can do it. Just let me get back to the hard part. So
exactly.
Yeah.
The only reason I would be like, put me at the earlier phase is because, again, it's Metal Gear Solid. There's weird things that just go on. It's like, well, I feel confident about the first phase. Now I'm going to do the thing where I throw a doll and they get distracted by it.
Yeah.
I don't know of any instance of that happening in Metal Gear Solid 4. That's just...
just an example, a plausible example.
Yeah, just weird interactions that happen. They're everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Anything else about the gameplay here?
I would say that Metal Gear Solid 3 probably has my favorite classic Metal Gear Solid gameplay. Those were like the most memorable bosses. But getting a chance to revisit Metal Gear Solid 4, I'm actually excited to do another run, to get some more emblems, to try a few more things. Because something I love about these games is the possibility of discovery. And now, nearly 20 years removed, more than 15 years removed, I'm a much better gamer. And I know a lot more about games. And so I am excited to fail again. That's the other thing. I said before, you don't go into Metal Gear Solid games at all, guns blazing. And Metal Gear Solid 4, because of the 3D motion, because of everything else, it encourages moments of pause. Watch. What's going on? You're not watching cones of vision to move around. You are trying to get a feel of a living, breathing space. And whether that is grounded in reality or not, who cares? It's grounded in Metal Gear Solid. And I want to do it again.
Yeah. That's a good point. One of the big criticisms that I would have of the first Metal Gear Solid game is that you could basically play most of that game without looking at the screen. You could
it's
just play
a puzzle game for your phone.
Play it in the mini-map, this game, you can do that, but it's limited by the battery. So you can really only do it when you really need to do it. When there's a lot of enemies around, you can watch that way. This is a game that will reward you for sitting and observing. Maybe a guard is making their rounds. Maybe there's a conflict and you don't want the fighters to see you or something like that. You're actually rewarded from sitting and watching the NPCs and seeing what they're doing so that you can figure out, like, it's not that many of them. I can just take them out with the guns, or, hey, there's a little alley over there. I wonder if I can sneak through there, stuff like that. I always felt pretty good, figuring out how to get through. Also, I forgot, the new camouflage system is really cool, where Snake has this like context dependent camo, future tech, where like if you lean up against a brick wall, his suit will turn brick color. And if you stand still, and if they don't like literally bump into you, then you're pretty much safe to just kind of chill there and observe. So that's part of that equation too, is like find a hiding spot, scope it out, and then take whatever approach you want.
Yeah. And you're able to save those too. You can go into the menu and go, I do really like this one. And there's a bunch of different textures going on in this area. I want to hold on to this one and not have to like keep going back for it. Let me set it to manual. Let me save this one. Cool.
Yeah.
And there's actually a few rare surfaces that you can save the camo, and it's like a rare camo. There's no material reward that I know of in game, but the game rewards you for trying a lot of things in tangible ways. And there's those very intangible ways that it rewards patience and observation.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so before we get into spoilers and all of that, let's wrap up as we normally do. Let's talk about who we would recommend play Metal Gear Solid 4. And sometimes I ask this question when we talk about games within longer series, but do you think this is a good game for like a new Metal Gear player to start with? And otherwise, is there anyone else that you would recommend play this?
I mean, I recommend anybody who has ever had any love for the Metal Gear Solid series to give it another go. Definitely. Yeah. Whether or not... Okay. I think I might recommend this as a first game or a second game to somebody.
Oh.
If they really, really want the like, all right, the sort of person who goes to the Thai restaurant and goes, no, I want the 10 out of 5 heat. Fuck me up. Like this is the spicy of Metal Gear Solid.
Okay, I can see that.
so somebody that really wants that, or it's Because it is actually a little tricky to go back to some of the older games because of what you were talking about with the way that they control and the way that they play. This is the first one that feels anything like a modern action title.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a bit of that. If someone is unafraid of playing catch up and getting really taken for the ride of what the hell is going on here.
Yeah.
There were several story points. My partner has never played a Metal Gear Solid game. Actually, she played like the first 5 minutes of Metal Gear Solid. And due to reasons, we never kept playing. So she would come into the room during some of the strangest moments, and it left me going, okay, what does this look like to someone who doesn't know? And I'm not going to say these moments this side of the spoiler wall. I might reference one or two of them later. But like, there is a small but distinct, like, I don't have a blanket statement of like, I recommend this as a first Metal Gear Solid 2 blank.
Yeah.
But I do recommend, if you're enjoying Metal Gear Solid on any level, don't ignore this one.
Yeah.
It plays well. They do a lot of cool things. It's uneven, but the weaknesses actually aren't as weak as you think. And the heights are great.
I had heard, I think, before playing this that, I'd heard about the cutscenes, and I had heard that the story was like cool the first time you see it, but like the more you think about it, the more it sucks. That is kind of what I'd heard about it.
Yeah.
And
it's insane story. Yes.
Yeah, it's a wild story. I just don't think that it sucks the more you think about it. I think that there's like stuff in here that is more shallow than it seems when it's first presented, but that is not new for this series at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the best recommendations I'd ever been given about this game, if you choose to play it, especially if it's your first time or your first time back in a while, do not play it in one sitting, even if you set the whole day aside for it.
Mm.
The game is divided into acts.
Yes, it is.
Don't play more than one act per day.
Yeah.
They have briefings that you can skip that you can watch later or watch them. I like to watch them because there's stuff you can find, stuff you can do in them. Again, you interact the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
But any one of these is its own rise and fall, is its own motions, has its own, let's say, gimmicks.
Yeah.
None of them are a whole game unto themselves, but they are whole experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that time away and coming back, I think, is a great way of going about it.
I agree. Yeah. Plus, you'll want to let some of that stuff digest, and you'll want to think about who these people are and what they want and all of that stuff too, for sure. I think that for most people, this is probably best played once you've played the first 3 games. Although I do kind of agree, like, if you want to be taken on a wild ride and not know what the hell's going on for a while, then like this is a fun game. It's a little harder to recommend that way at the time of recording because it's not available anywhere except the PS3.
No,
so,
if you have the means to play 3 and 4, that's a hell of a 1-2 punch to do.
Yeah, for sure. So I hope that they're doing, a Legacy Collection Volume 2 or something like that. And maybe by the time this episode is out, Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake comes out sometime this year, hopefully. Then that's going to be like the next step so more people can play it. Because I think this game is really good. It's like, I would struggle to pick a favorite in the series so far. I think they're all equally, they have their own strengths and stuff that make it it's been a really consistent, like, good time going through the series for me. So
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, this is one that I had heard it's people's least favorite. Or like if you were to look at, the Metal Gear Solid games ranked, this one's usually near the bottom, and I don't actually think that that's really a critique. Like, I might put it there too if I had to make a list, but it's not necessarily a critique of this game. It would just be like, I might like stuff that the other games do better than what this game does, but there are strengths here too, for sure.
Yeah, it's a, whether by cutscene or by whatever, it does feel like a bigger game. And in bigger games, the setback moments, the choke points feel all the more egregious because you're trying to get through the whole game here. There are moments that happen in the first 3 Metal Gear Solids that, let's face it, suck.
Yes.
You just do them, okay? We're going to get through this. We're going to be fine, everybody. But because either you've played them enough times or you have enough cool memories of them or whatever else, they're like, oh yeah, that part. I do hate that part. Whatever. versus Metal Gear Solid 4, those parts aren't necessarily worse or not that much worse, but they stick out more.
I would say those parts where like I just had no idea what I was supposed to do sucked, but like there weren't as many parts as like I'm thinking of like my least favorite boss fights throughout the other 3 games, and I don't think that there are any moments that, you know, I look at them and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck they were thinking here, or like they had an idea and they just could not pull it off.
Right.
Like some of those older ones. I didn't get any of that in Metal Gear Solid 4. So we'll have some things to talk about in the spoiler section for more like detailed things about the story that I think is not great, but we'll get there. Yeah. It's still like a good recommendation. If you're in on Metal Gear Solid, I think you'll like Metal Gear Solid 4.
Yes, I think that's what it is. This is if you've passed whatever barrier of entry and you're interested, you're going to love it.
Yeah. I think you said earlier, it's like all of the strengths, all of the excesses, all of the weaknesses of the series at large, they feel like concentrated here in Metal Gear Solid 4. So if you're in for all of that, then this is it. This is the game. Try it out.
Yeah. Let's go for it.
Yeah. If you played, you know, if you're new, like the Metal Gear Solid 1 through 3 remasters came out, if you played through those for the first time, this is the next one up. Hopefully it becomes, you know, available other than the PS3 and emulation. But
I really want that. I want to see what comes of it. Like, honestly, the Master Collection is something that I'm hopeful about because, more people should experience this game. And because it's isolated to the PS3, it's had more time to generate this kind of opinion about it and for it to be sort of calcified as, oh, that one.
It's, the weaker one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, lots of thoughts. We'll revisit a lot of that in the spoiler section. For now, before we get to spoilers, we have our customary housekeeping to do. And we always start with the guest. So as I said at the top of the show, Geoff is one member of the Fun and Games podcast, along with frequent collaborator on this show, Matt Storm. So Geoff, tell people you get to make the pitch this time. Tell people about Fun and Games and where they can find you.
Yay. Fun and Games Podcast is a conversation and interview show about the history, present, and culture of video games. We like to bring an optimistic view of games and gaming, the media and its developments, to what we do and how we talk about it. The people we bring in, we like to have the idea that every game is somebody's favorite and no one person can play every video game that's out there. So it's up to us to bring our experiences and our love together to find out more. Our favorite games come from personal recommendations far more often than anywhere else. So between our main show and side quests, we like bringing that love of games there. And you can find us as part of the Certain POV podcast network, certainpov.com. And we are Fun and Games Pod on Blue Sky, on Instagram, on Tumblr. You can find us in all those spots and places. It's not much on Tumblr right now. That's where I intend to put more unhinged writing once I put it down. It's mostly Google Drive documents at the moment. But you can also find me at Geoff Makes Noise, Geoff Makes Noise, on all of those same platforms where I am in addition to being a games journalist and podcaster, I am a voice actor, and musician.
Yeah. Fun and Games is, Matt usually makes the pitch. Matt's been on the show many times, but they talk about it as, like you said, it's a place that is above all things a celebration of video games and why people love them.
Yes.
Whether it's topics, whether it's, sometimes talking about specific games, the side quest series, which is just literally people's love for a particular game distilled down into 5 to 20 minutes monologue.
I found a lot of new games for my collection, new favorites through side quests.
Yeah, me too. And I found a lot of podcast guests through side quest things on there too. So I appreciate the both of you running that.
Community matters.
Yeah, to feed the Rolodex for this show. So I've done lots of side quest episodes. I've also been on the main episodes a couple of times. Most recently, I think, was the Xbox 360 retrospective episode.
Yes. Much the same as you were looking for Metal Gear Solid sickos for these. Once we were talking about console retrospectives, you going like, so when are you doing Xbox 360, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, that's what we want.
Yeah. So highly recommended that people check out Fun and Games, and I will put links down in the show notes for social media stuff for the podcast so people can easily find the show. Highly recommended. I wouldn't keep inviting the both of you back if I didn't love the show. So
likewise.
Yeah, thank you. So there's that. And then for this podcast, the normal ways to support shows, as always, are ratings and reviews on podcast apps. If you're listening, that's really helpful. Likes and comments on YouTube, all of those things will help people find the podcast, which is what we want. You can listen to my other show. It's called A Top 3 Podcast, where we do lists. We draft weird topics. That is a comedy show, and I think it's a fun one. You can also join the Discord server for this podcast if you want to join the community. It is a lively and friendly community of people who love talking about video games. We would love to have you join as well. And last but not least, you can join the Patreon if you want to support monetarily. Patreon.com/RealDaveJackson is the place for that. So we are going to take a break, and when we come back, it will be full spoiler time for Metal Gear Solid 4. All right, before we get to full spoilers for Metal Gear Solid 4, I have one guest appearance announcement to make in case you want to hear me on another podcast, and the customary thank yous per usual. First of all, I was on the Pixels and Polygons podcast to talk about which we value most. Do we value narrative in games or gameplay in games? Or a secret third answer. You'll never find out unless you listen to a short commute length episode on Pixels and Polygons. I will put that in the show notes so you can easily find it. And as always, I would like to say thank you to the wonderful folks who support the show over on Patreon. Big shout out to all of you, especially Chris Nelson, the Top 3 Podcast crew, Zulgeek, Chris Copleen, Eric Guess, Rick Firestone, Nick Fakori, Jill, Soccer, Cupcake, Kyle, Christian S., Matt aka Stormageddon, JD, Doug Leaf, Jason Emery, Brian Skirsha, Jenny E., Marcus O'Neill, David Stecco, Stefan, Drellish, Rob Smith, Rigamort, Ashton Ruby, and many more. Thank you all for your support. It means the world to me. And if you are out there and you would like to support the work that I do, you can do so at patreon.com/RealDaveJackson. And with all that being said, let's go back. Full spoiler time for Metal Gear Solid 4. All right, we're back. It's full spoiler time for Metal Gear Solid 4. And as always, not a linear walk through the story, so we may spoil things that happen at the very end in the next 30 seconds. So please jump out if you don't want to be spoiled. Play the game, come back, we will be here. Now, with that being said, I wanted to kick the spoilers section off with just some miscellaneous before we get into those two major storylines. Favorite boss fights, favorite missions, favorite, moments that aren't directly connected to Snake's story or the Patriots story or something like that. Does anything jump out at you?
I loved Act 3, being able to, the stalking of trailing someone in a city.
Oh, yeah.
It was,
yeah.
I mean, it's frustrating, but there's also the notion of there again, don't treat it like an action game. Man, why is everyone following me? Unequip your gun.
Yeah, true.
Oh, then and also, I mentioned in the mission briefings you can pick up stuff. If you drive around the Metal Gear Mark II and bump into people, you get extra face camo. So during Act 3, everyone clocks young Snake's face. Well, that's fine. I had Otacon's face. So I switched to Otacon's face, and no one followed me.
Interesting.
So I had a whole cat and mouse stalking around, and did I get frustrated? Did I lose it a bunch of times? Absolutely. But also it was such a different thing, and it was still stealth gameplay, and I felt like a different kind of being a spy.
Yeah, no, that feels like, I don't want to say real spy work. I don't know anything about real spy work.
Classic spy work. Yeah,
that it's like you looking around the corner as someone walks down the street, or they turn around and you jump behind a dumpster or something like that. That's that. I didn't know, I completely forgot about the face camo as I was playing, so I didn't know that you could do that. That sounds very cool. What happened for me in that mission is I I tranked the entire city.
I mean, I also did that during those points later on where like, oh, your elite soldier here, part of the resistance, got caught every 30 feet towards the end there.
Yeah.
It's like, I trank these guys. He wanders on. Oh no, Snake, he's getting arrested. He's going to be dragged off. Do something. I just did. Dear God, man.
What happened for me was I got into a big thing where like someone saw me and there was a big commotion. So I was like,
oh yeah,
trank, like 5 people in a row. And one of those people was the guy I was supposed to tail who I tranked on accident. So then I had to wait for him to wake up.
Oh, you can wake him up early and then run behind a wall.
That's true. I figured that out after a while. So what I did before that is like, okay, I had to wait for him to wake up and also wait and hide for the alert thing to go down and all that stuff.
Periodically trank the other guys to re-up it.
Yeah. So he would start to wake up and then like the guard across the street would start to wake up. You're like, oh shit, pop, trank him again. And then the guy wakes up and eventually, and this all happened, like the biggest clusterfuck of this happened right outside of the gate. That's the end of the mission.
Yep.
So it was like, I know I'm right here. I just need like 10 seconds of peace for this guy to walk over to the gate. And finally it happened.
Yeah, that was around where I was running into that too, where I think that was the longest portion where I'm like, we're all idiots here. I'm an idiot. Everyone in the game's an idiot. Let's just, can we move on though?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's a notable part because it's so different from everything else you've basically ever done in Metal Gear. You're not in a war zone. You're in just like a regular city. You're not on a military base. It's just a city.
You're in the super specific area of Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, look, throughout the game, it's like we're in the Middle East, we're in South America, we're wherever else. But like Raiden being like, go to Europe. Okay.
Yeah. All right,
Eastern Europe. Cool.
I'll see you there. Yeah.
I mean, this is a great way to like prevent borders changing and suddenly whatever else. You're in your own fiction. It's fine. But especially because a lot of the other missions do that cool thing of, hey, we're going to take a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this that you remember from previous games and remix them. And it's going to make something new and exciting. But this is one that, the location of it being in like a city after curfew, that very like coat and fedora kind of following somebody feeling of it, it's not in the other, you could probably pull pieces of the DNA, but only because of gameplay. It is its own new experience.
Yep. Definitely new, and definitely notable for sure. One of my favorites is the opposite of that. It is going back to the Shadow Moses site.
Because they lean in. Oh, it's fun.
Oh, yeah. Like for a brief, because it starts, they put you back in the Metal Gear Solid 1 graphics.
And control scheme.
Yeah, and control scheme. And I was like, what is going on here? And I died like 4 times before I finally there's like one guard too, and I like couldn't handle it.
What's so funny to me is that area, like right after you come up from the elevator, it's past the title screen, like it is that vertical slice of this is Metal Gear Solid. Get into the tank hangar, get into the disposal facility. And that is what is on the demo discs. And that is so early in the game. So that specific part of Metal Gear Solid, I haven't played in a long time, but I've played enough for several lifetimes.
Yeah.
So there was just kind of a like, oh, wow. Oh, okay, it's coming back to me. Do all the buttons work the way? Yeah, no, it's exactly how I remember them. All right, I'm going to choke that guy out and do this, and off we go.
Yep.
So it was a quick nostalgia flashback for me, but it was just like the whiplash I got is spectacular.
Yeah. It's cool too, because if you remember specific rooms, how to get through them from the original game, that will help you in this mission as well. There's a specific part where it's like this basement level with a bunch of like glass doors, and I think in the original game it like filled with gas or something like that.
Yeah, that was Otacon's office. The floor was electrified and it had gas in it.
Right, that's right.
It still had the destruction of the thing that electrified the floor. Like they have that conversation where it's just like, don't worry, Snake, you're not going to get shot.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. But I remembered like the layout of that. And so you go in there, you do something simple, and one of those gecko Metal Gears comes in, and you're like, oh fuck, it's right there. But I was like, there's a side passage around here. Let me just go. And it was there. And I thought that was really cool. Again, they're calling back to the first game by even making you go back here in the first place. But they're the detail to be like, people are going to remember this. We want to make sure that it's represented the way it used to be. It looks nicer now and all that stuff. And you go back into the room where you fought the cyborg ninja. I forget his name.
Yeah.
That might even be his name. Gray Fox. Yeah. You go
Frank
into
Yeager,
that room.
Gray Fox. No.
Yeah,
whatever.
The room where, I think that was one of the many rooms where Otacon peed himself in the first game.
He only peed himself once, which is more than most characters in Metal Gear Solid or any video game have peed themselves.
In this game, you have
people don't forget.
Yeah, people don't forget. Yeah, you have Johnny who fills that role in this game. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, Johnny.
Yeah, but just going back to Shadow Moses and going through those rooms, and I remember the rooms, and my knowledge of them was legitimately helpful. Because you don't want to fight those big gecko things if you don't have to. So It was awesome.
The way that, and even still, you could still play around with things. I bring up the electrified floor because the way that I dealt with that gecko was turning back on the floor.
Oh, I didn't know you could.
If you send the little Metal Gear Mark II or Mark III at that point through, he can go under the desk and go around and turn on the electrified floor.
That's sick.
And it will insta-kill and you get a bunch of Drebin points. It's very fun.
That's awesome. I forgot to use the little Metal Gear thing throughout the whole game.
I remembered little tricks when to use them and didn't use them otherwise. And I think in my next playthrough, whether that's as soon as we're done recording or in a couple of weeks, who's to say? I'm going to do it again, but I got shit to do. I'm probably going to play around with the Mark II a little more. Like it's again that, play it the way that I think to play it. And now let me use the new tools, the ones I don't think of, but also the way that, they layer the nostalgia, the flashbacks, the trauma and everything of Shadow Moses into that chapter. You have areas, you go somewhere, and that's on that same floor. You go off the now de-electrified floor, you go into the hallway where you first see the cyborg ninja like flashing in and out of the optical camouflage, just massacring, butchering these guys, like a horror movie hallway. Bloodstains are still there. And you walk there and you hear this sort of like, You hear what I now call the flashback sound, and you get the original audio recordings of the conversations that happen. I say original. They do use the Twin Snakes re-record, which I appreciate because it does away with Naomi and Mei Ling's accents.
Oh,
which is,
okay.
Mei Ling doesn't have the very racist accent that she has in the original in Twin Snakes, and it's the same voice actor throughout. But she sounds like someone who was raised in America.
Yeah.
Oddly enough. But, you go to these places, you hear that. You wander in certain areas like where Meryl was shot by Sniper Wolf, and you get her whole speech, which is fun because some of these characters that you're remembering are dead. Some of them aren't, and you saw them recently. And so here, that speech in particular stuck out to me because it's after, Meryl has a hell of a day in Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
And that's, she is bleeding out on the snow and has resigned herself to death. And it's just like, I thought war was glamorous, but war is ugly. There is no glory. There is no honor. And then you see her in Metal Gear Solid 4 and it's like, oh, honey, you're in the system, aren't you?
Yeah.
And at that point, this is like Act 4. So you've seen who Meryl has become, and she doesn't appear in 2 and 3. So you only have that like 18-year-old rookie to deal with. And then who she is in 4. And so like there's those weird little moments. The Hind D is still crashed where it crashed. And there's still ghosts in the game. Did you look for ghosts?
I did not look for ghosts.
Because if you get the camera and you take pictures in the appropriate spots, you can find ghosts.
Interesting.
Yeah. That was something that was in the original game. They hit the development team. There's like 40 different spots where like you take a picture here and then you like play with the picture and there's a ghost that appears.
I had no idea.
There's a couple of, like if you take a picture of the Police Knots poster in Otacon's office, Hideo Kojima shows up.
Interesting.
If you take a picture of the Rex cockpit, Liquid Snake's in there. And you actually get a trophy for finding the ghosts. So there again, they have these pieces towards the end of that act when you're fighting off the geckos and Raiden is fighting Vamp. If you like try to aim anything at Raiden and shoot him, he says it's no good. I can't do it, which is exactly what Snake says during the cutscene where you're aiming the stinger at Gray Fox while he's being crushed by Rex in Metal Gear Solid.
Mm-hmm.
They just, that one in particular, they're like, okay, for 3 acts, we have held back on way too much nostalgia. Like, we'll connect the story, but it's fine. Okay, can we go to Shadow Moses now? Oh my God. And they it's a nostalgia decadence.
Yeah, it works. It's a lot of fun to go back there. Even for me who just played the first game one time and, I remember like the broad strokes of the story and like some of the notable events. And I probably remember the boss fights more than anything about
of course.
the first game. But it was still awesome to go back to that level. It felt like a nostalgic level for a game that I played 2 years ago.
And they give you so many little fun moments, Otacon gets to make a fourth wall breaking joke about changing the disc. It's like, oh, wait, we're on the PlayStation 3 now. Dual layer disc, cool. And that part, you go into the blast furnace in the original. So, like, you've been in Alaska, you've been in the cold, and suddenly you're in, like, smelting lava and everything else. This one, there's no reason for it to be running.
Right.
So you go in, and there's no, aside from the boss fight, aside from Crying Wolf, there's no living soldiers you fight.
Mm-hmm.
So it furthers this alienation, this war has changed, this we've moved on feeling, the organic versus the digital.
Yeah, because that place is full of those shitty little, like, 2-armed, like, drone robots.
Those little fucking the dwarf geckos.
Yep.
And so I never missed chaff grenades more. Did you notice you can't buy chaff grenades?
I did notice that, yeah. And I was like, okay, maybe stun grenades. It's not the same thing.
There are 8 chaff grenades in the entire game. There's just 4 spots. You can find 2 of them. One of them's in exactly where it was on Shadow Moses the first time. And I blew right through them, and I regret my decision greatly.
Yep. It's like you mentioned catharsis earlier in something else. The next time I play Metal Gear Rising will be a catharsis, just slicing those little fuckers up in the middle levels.
Oh, it's going to feel good.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of nostalgia, but like kind of getting to realize dreams, you get to pilot Metal Gear Rex.
Yes, that's true.
You have a mech kaiju fight.
Yes.
we're back to 12-year-olds playing with action figures here, and I don't care. So you played through Metal Gear Solid. Did you play through the VR missions?
No, I didn't.
So the VR missions on the original for PS1, there are 300 VR missions. There's super cool stuff. There's, all the weapon stuff. There's a murder mystery one. There's one where you fight a giant Godzilla-sized soldier. And out of the 300 of them, 3 of them you play as Gray Fox.
Oh, okay.
And you can do everything he does in the game. You can go stealth. You can do all the cool sword slashes. You can do that thing at the end of the fight where he's like got the weird energy waves going on and he's just screaming his head off. These are not stealth missions.
Yeah.
These are, you're a ninja. Go.
Mm-hmm.
And that level of like, oh, I get just a moment of this. I'm going to love this moment. That is what I felt playing as piloting the Rex, the sort of corridor shoot 'em up section into the kaiju fight with Ray.
Yeah.
Like this was amazing. I love this. I don't want any more of it in this game.
But for one section, yeah.
But for one section, yeah, it's one of those ways where they bring a lot of new gameplay experiences into this game that I'm like, hell yeah, bring it on. Like I'm not going to be like, oh man, the first 3 acts are great, but there's no piloting a Metal Gear. But when I get back to that, I'm going to have the best time.
Yeah, it's fun. You just reminded me what happens at the end of that too. I laughed out loud. So after that fight, when you fight the other Metal Gear, Raiden comes and saves you and buys you time so you can escape. And then he shows up later and he doesn't have any arms or something like that. And
he has no arms.
Fights with his sword in his mouth, which I thought was very funny and very of course, Raiden's not dead.
No.
But we got to make sure it looks like he was hurt in the last thing. Like there was a sacrifice for what he did, but he can still fight with the sword in his mouth because this is Metal Gear fucking Solid. And of course he can.
You think if he shows up, he's here to get slaughtered? No.
No.
If Raiden shows up in this game, it is to be cool.
Yeah.
It is to be edgy and cool.
It feels to me like they heard all the criticism for Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 2, and like some of it is true.
Right.
Raiden's not cool in that game. You wanted to be cool, Snake, and Raiden's not cool.
And that's the point.
Right. He's capable, but he's not cool. And that's the point. That's his character.
Right.
In Metal Gear Solid 4, they're like, we're going to make Raiden the coolest fucking combatant of anyone in the game.
Yeah.
Like, nobody else can do the sword shit that he does, except for Vamp, kind of. But no one else can do all that stuff. It's
Which
just
is
him.
Yeah. And it's so funny watching the two of them do that. And so the end of Metal Gear Solid 2, you kind of have you're playing as Raiden, you're trying to be Snake. It's not working out for you. Solid Snake gives you a katana.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's a new dawn, it's a new day, and I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
And at the end of Act 5, there's the bit where, Raiden shows up and he's holding the sword with his feet. He's holding back. And he is continuing to play the world of Metal Gear Solid the way that Jack the Ripper, the ninja, is supposed to.
Yeah.
But he then kind of hands it back to you in a weird way because that section feels a lot like fighting the Tengus in Arsenal Gear. And there's an interesting, you spent all of 2 watching how cool Solid Snake is. Now you're watching how cool Raiden is, and now you have to go suffer. Yeah. It's great. It's great.
Oh, it's like, right after you're watching him fight off all those soldiers when Snake's going through the microwave tunnels.
Yeah.
And it's like the most excruciating bit of gameplay. Like if you hate sections where it's like the game dramatically shows that your character's hurt by slowing you down, this is like the worst section of that I've ever experienced.
If you didn't like the torture sequences in all the other Metal Gear Solids, boy howdy do we have bad news.
Yeah. I can't remember. Is that a button mash to move through that corridor? Yeah, it's brutal.
It is.
I was just thinking, why was that so brutal? It's because it's a button mash for 5 fucking minutes.
And so it's one of those, you can explain it as a very ambitious way of, okay, the nanomachines suppress pain. We as video gamers aren't feeling the pain of combat, but we're going to give you a little bit, you're going to suffer a little.
Yeah.
How well can you do with this? Yeah. And this one, it's a little more forgiving than the previous torture sequences because those had submission buttons or they were meant to be quicker. This one, you have until that cutscene plays out. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember how long that is. Also, I was not interested in waiting to find out. I was mashing like crazy.
I was doing the old put my shirt over the controller button to press the button faster than is physically possible to do just with your normal, hand grip.
I've never done that.
Yeah, I've never been good at rapid button pressing, so we learned a trick when we were kids to hold the controller horizontal, put your shirt over the button, and then just kind of side to side.
Forth.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that'll do it way faster. It's the only way I beat the torture thing in the first game.
Final Fantasy VIII taught me to develop a trigger finger. Doing boosts. That was, yeah. So this and all that, but there again, it's finding those strategies. It's finding that suffering. It's just, how are you going to get through this?
How are you going to get through that? Yeah. This is, I think it's a good point to talk about why Snake's in that microwave tunnel in the first place.
Yeah.
So Snake's story in here is really interesting. The way that they go about, I always find it really interesting, especially in games, because in games you have the power fantasy in a way that other mediums can have super powerful characters, but I don't feel like they have the same. Maybe it's an artificial limitation, but the same limitation on how do you kill the power fantasy character, right?
Right.
And I don't want to give specific examples, but there are a lot of notable ones where they found creative ways to kill these characters off, or make them feel like they're in danger. Snake doesn't die, but to make them feel like they're not invincible after all. They're probably not going to die in single combat because like that doesn't work in video games unless you like really commit to that. You really have to like commit to that. So I think a lot of games go with something like an illness, which is what this eventually turns into, the storyline with Snake and the nanomachines that have mutated inside his body to become, or no, not the nanomachines. The Foxdie virus has mutated to become a new version that he's basically a walking biological weapon who is going to die sooner than his natural life would be if he wasn't a clone with artificially shortened telomeres and all that shit.
It's hard to remember sometimes that Snake is canonically 42 years old in this game.
Yeah, but he looks much older because his DNA was created so that he wouldn't live a long time.
Yeah, there's ends of the chromosomes, I believe, the telomeres that sort of help with cellular age, and his were artificially shortened. So yes, at age 42, he looks about as old as the 70-year-old Ocelot.
Yeah, exactly. So they put it so that like if he lives out his natural life, he will expose everybody to this new virus. He's basically a walking biological weapon.
He was created as a weapon from birth, and he is now finally evolved into
a much worse weapon. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I imagine for him that feels like that may as well happen.
Right. So that's why he's in the microwave tunnel, this kind of suicide mission. As it was introduced, it was like, hey, Snake's like, oh shit, this is, because they say if you die, the virus inside you dies as well. So that will be the end of this. So this is a way for him to do the heroic act. It is a way for him to die in a place where, only somebody who has nothing left to live for would go through the microwave tunnel and do this, because it means, that's the end for you. And so that's why he volunteers to go through that. The microwave tunnel is a defense for the Patriots AI core. We're in the spoiler section now. The Patriots are all dead. It's an AI system at this point.
Well, and even the ones that are still alive are no longer attached to the system or functioning.
Yeah, exactly. There's two that are still alive, right?
Right. But one opted out and one is a vegetable.
Exactly. Yeah. So this was like the part of the story. I'm always interested in the Patriot story because I think it's like interesting to think about the ramifications of taking down the Patriots with how connected everything is now. But I wanted to know what was going to happen with Snake. And so this is, again, similar to those other games where it's like, okay, it's time to kill the hero. How do we kill the hero? It's like, you play the Yakuza games. It's like Kiryu's not going to die in combat. Yeah. So how else could they remove Kiryu from the story? It's time for Snake to retire. It's time for Snake's story to be over.
Yeah.
He's not going to die, and he's not going to, someone's not going to shoot him in combat and he just dies. Like that's off the table. So how do you do it?
And that sort of Doyleist idea of there's no like happy retirement for Snake. Because if you want to make another Metal Gear Solid, you can make it about new characters, you can do whatever. But Snake's just hanging out. Yeah. What's he up to? He's enjoying his retirement, but what if we brought back Solid Snake? No, we have to definitively end this guy.
Yep, exactly. So how do you do it? And they chose to do it with a kind of a combination of he knows that he has to die, but also he has this kind of illness. And illness seems to be one of the more popular ways to take down characters like this.
And what's interesting is the illness won't kill him.
Right.
It will kill other people. And so he has his own sense of responsibility pulling in both directions of doing as much as he can with his limited time based on his basically sell-by date that was baked into him from the time of the Les Enfants Terribles project.
Yeah.
As well as I can't go on too long before I start killing everybody.
Right. So there's two illnesses. The
Foxdie
virus won't kill him, but the premature aging thing will kill him.
He'll break down. Yeah.
So I thought that this was going to end up with him, because getting through the microwave tunnel was a giant struggle, as we've said, for him and for us. So I thought that was going to be the end, and it was going to be like, he did this this selfless, heroic act, and that was going to be the end of Snake, as going through a tunnel of intense microwave radiation probably should be the end of whoever does that.
Yeah.
Right?
Being killed by the nuclear age in so many ways.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not. I thought that the way that Snake's story kind of ends here felt like for the whole game, they were on board with this plan to kill Snake. And then at the last second, they were like, we can't kill Snake. We have to think of a different way.
So do you know about Hideo Kojima's original ending for Metal Gear Solid 4?
I read it, but I forgot. Please refresh my memory.
What he originally wanted, or what is known of what he originally wanted, the mission's done, Snake survives, and Snake and Otacon turn themselves in because they are technically terrorists, and they die by firing squad.
Yes, I did read that.
Consequence. And the whole team was like, we will not make your game.
We can't do this.
Change that. So they give him a definitive end, but they let him, and again, as I said before, they kind of have to so neatly tie this up that a little bit of Deus Ex Machina is okay, because they are closing the book, they're tying off the loop, and they're still having the look, you don't have to watch Snake die. Snake doesn't live much longer than this. Leave it up to the fanfic writers.
Yeah. So on this case, there's another case of Deus Ex Machina later that I think is way worse than this. In this case, they kind of say, okay, Snake survives this. How did he survive it? Who knows? Don't think too hard about it. He survived this, but he's going out, to live on the farm, so to speak, after this, right? Yeah. I thought that the scene where after you do this, they're having the wedding where Otacon talks about Snake, I thought was really, really good. I want to shout out that scene in particular, where Sonny is asking, where's Snake? Is he coming? And Otacon just kind of gives this very sad speech about how, Snake's had a hard life and he needs to be alone for a while. But the way that his voice is quivering in that scene, it's just really, really, really good. And it's as close as the series has gotten in what I've played to the end of Metal Gear Solid 3, which was devastating to see. Yeah. This part's great.
Well, Otacon is somebody who just keeps losing people.
Yeah. Yeah. His sister. Yeah.
And he just keeps, and this is the first time it's a dude.
Yeah. It's his friend. That's another thing I wanted to mention here is this is the only time I've ever felt like Snake had a friend more than a working, partnership with Otacon. It really feels like they actually do care about each other in this game.
I've known since the second game, Snake would not come up with a secret handshake with somebody that wasn't a friend.
Yeah.
He pumps his buddy up with the secret handshake that Otacon definitely insisted on doing.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
sure.
So there is something of look, there's also a lot of fun to be had in looking at the homoerotic subtext of the Metal Gear Solid series. Because, boy howdy. However, the thing is, Snake and Otacon, however you want to slice it, it is a love story. And it could even be a platonic one, and one of two friends that have that kind of intense bond and care and loyalty for each other. That doesn't belittle it or diminish it because it is not a romantic love. And so, even in its own way, there's several instances where Otacon's question from the first game, can love bloom on a battlefield? This is a way that it can. The way that you care for your comrades, the way that you look out for the people in your life. When the mission's over, what continues?
Yeah.
Do you find the next mission, or do you take care of each other, or both? And so, that is Otacon finally seeing there's not another mission. It's finally he's, the whole time he's been simultaneously and understandably, you're an incredible badass. You are in rough shape, buddy. Take a break. You're going to die, but I don't have to watch you do it in a gruesome, terrible manner.
Right.
And so the fact that afterwards, and I could see how it might cheapen it a little bit, where you get the, yes, you don't have much time left, and I'm going to bear witness.
Well, that part, once you have kind of set that, okay, this is what's happening, Snake's going to go try to relax. If he's able to do that, he's going to go try to live. It's Otacon told him that at the end of the first game. What do you do after this is over? He says, go live, try to live.
Yeah.
And it's back here in this one too. Big Boss tells Snake that to don't spend the rest of your time fighting. Like, try to live, try to relax, try to be a normal person for the little time that you have left.
And amongst the conversations that are like, we want a soldier's heaven where a soldier's always wanted.
Yeah.
This is the soldier's dream. The swords to plowshares.
The opposite ideology to what Liquid wants. Liquid wants the world for fighting soldiers. And this is the world where, like, hey, the soldier Snake can finally relax.
Yeah.
So
and it's the boss's dream, perhaps.
Yeah. I'm not mad at this. Like, once you have said, okay, Snake didn't die in that thing, he's actually going to live. Because I had heard before that, like, people were like, oh, I cried at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4. And I was like, oh, okay, Snake dies. That's why.
Well,
and I can
the
see
fact
why.
that the title screen is the scene at the graveyard, and if you let it play out, it goes to black and you hear the gunfire. The idea that if you wait too long on the title screen, Snake kills himself, as far as you're concerned.
Right, as far as you know. And then they show that scene in the game. The one where he couldn't do it. That was another one where I was like, okay, all right. But I like the idea of Snake finally getting to rest, similar to Geralt getting to rest at the end of one of the DLCs in The Witcher 3. Like,
they deserve that.
They deserve it. Are they going to be able to rest? Who knows? But like you said, that friendship, Otacon is like, I want to be there for this, even if it's not that long. I will be there with you. He says to pass on your story,
which is important. And that idea of, something that keeps coming up throughout the story, and something that I kept writing down as shorthand for myself because I'm a theater nerd, is the bit from Hamilton, what is a legacy? Because there is the idea of, I have no genes to pass on. I have no memes. I have no whatever that is. But, like, what do you pass on? Is it your story? Is it your actions? Is it everything else? And so Otacon, somebody who is sympathetic but realistic towards Snake, cataloging and telling his story is what you want. You can read snippets of the in-universe book that Nastasha Romanenko wrote about Shadow Moses. And there's a little bit of like, oh, what an unstoppable badass that Solid Snake is. And so this carries with it, like, this is the legacy.
Yeah. You'd think Otacon would be able to tell a more complete story about who Snake is than someone who's chronicling military history, we'll say.
Yeah. And you see that in other things too. Like, yes, essentially the code of Snake is degrading.
Yeah.
And that is sort of what Foxdie was. And that is what happens amongst the nanomachine systems and everything else. What is eternal? Nothing is eternal. People die and rot. Code rots. And so one of the spots where I, in my notes, wrote what is a legacy was the completion of Fox Alive.
Yeah.
Where
very funny name, by the way, Fox Alive, very Metal Gear.
I know. It's like, you know what? Like, this is Act 5. If you're questioning it now, you missed the exit. But like, we could of course sit there and laugh at it. You're right. It's extremely Metal Gear. But it's, Naomi wrote it. But Sonny finished it using code from Emma. So one, all the important women in Hal's life at that moment helping to put these things to rest for his best friend. But I wrote down Emma left behind code. There's genetic code. There's computer code. Systems degrade. What is a legacy? And so that's another piece of where Snake is too. Yeah.
Well, Liquid is really concerned with the legacy too. Like, and, so Liquid has his goals. We'll talk about him. There's the conversation with Big Boss and Zero and the legacy that they left behind with what the Patriots became. Fulfilling Big Boss's dream. Eva talks about that as well when she comes back. So I think you're onto something here that, like, this being the last game in the series, I think a lot of characters are concerned with the legacy or the completion of their plans.
How many sins they've atoned for, how much mess have they left behind? Everybody leaves mess. To live is to be messy. To choose is to destroy.
Yeah, it's especially interesting when you see Zero, I think, at the end, and you see how others broke off of the Patriots system and kind of left him like in control of the Patriots, and then the Patriots got out of his control. And so all of this shit that you see with the Patriot AIs trying to basically control human free will. That's Zero's legacy, and they're telling you about that while they just show you as this, like you said, he's catatonic in a wheelchair, can't see really, can't talk, probably can't hear what's going on in that conversation. Yeah. They're talking about this man's legacy while showing like he has no control over anything left at all.
Yeah. Like it is a simple matter to end his life.
Yeah.
To just cut off his air supply, essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's just as much a thing of, so Big Boss was artificially kept in a catatonic state through nanomachines, through the Patriot system, through Zero's machinations, and Zero's organic life fell to the same fate.
Mm-hmm.
There's all of these things where, history rhymes and all those kinds of pieces too. And all of these characters, all of this stuff is coming down to, I was reminded when you were talking about everyone talking about Big Boss.
Yeah.
The notion of icon, the notion of person, of a notion of hero, of icon through noun versus verb. What they do versus who they are, what they represent versus who they actually are, which is also why Otacon is the sort of friend who will speak the truth of Snake. Snake, by his actions, is already an icon, is already a hero, despite his own protestations starting from several games ago.
Yeah.
And I think Big Boss would do something similar, despite occasionally using his reputation for gain and for everything like that. But there is Zero losing both, John the friend and Big Boss the icon. And those are both important. They are important locally, they are important globally. And what those mean and what those are, again, legacy. And, you can do everything you can tie everything up and you can go away. But then this entire thing, the storyline that started in 3 and is finished in 4, is everybody going, well, they just died. What did they mean? I'm going to interpret their wishes the best that I can, and I'm sure nothing wrong is going to happen from this.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about like Big Boss's legacy when Big Boss is assumed to be basically dead, or long out of the picture at the very least. Like when you talk to Eva, she's really, really driven by continuing on with his legacy and with his memory and his wishes and how he wanted the world to be, basically. I also had thought that part of Snake's legacy lives on with Raiden, as Snake is kind of takes on more of a mentorship role in this game to Raiden. In the first game, it was Meryl, where he's trying to say, like, this is not heroic what we're doing here. This is not being a hero, so please don't get the wrong expectations about this. And then in the second game, at the end, Snake is a mentor to Raiden, saying, like, you have a new chance. After this is all over, like, everything with Rose is maybe fucked, but, like, you have a chance. Live.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Maybe your life won't go down the same path that I did. And then they meet up again in 4, and things have not gone great for Raiden, but Snake basically gives Raiden another chance to, like, forge a new life, which he doesn't, because in Metal Gear Rising, Raiden's life is even worse than it is now. But
he is still married and knows his son exists. Like,
that's true.
I'm never going to run away again, but I will send you to Australia for your safety.
Yeah. Yep.
And the idea of getting the wishes and everything else, something that's talked about here in the game with 2 separate characters, is the imprinting of personality and, taking that over. But is not also subsuming yourself to the presumed wishes of someone else's legacy just as much giving yourself over to their personality? These are those questions that, they're discussion points. They don't answer the question. That's fine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. In a lot of those cases, yeah, for sure. It is interesting to go through these and kind of realize that as what they probably consider to be the last game, you want to wrap up these legacies as well too, or at least kind of put on Front Street what these legacies are. And so the way we remember them is going to be the same way that the characters in the game would remember these characters.
Wild.
What did you think of that conversation with Big Boss at the end? That was something that I was like, pretty shocked by him appearing at the end there. And he like gives advice to Snake, and he also kind of explains the whole thing with how the Patriots got to the way that they are right now. This obviously like a big thing to have Big Boss come back at the end here.
Oh, absolutely. if you want to be funny about it, you can kind of have Big Boss show up and go, all right, kid, this is how ending revelations happen in my games.
Yeah.
I'm bringing it to you. You're going to find them out all at once, probably at the grave of the boss.
Right.
Here we go.
Yeah.
But it's part of them having to wrap everything up. Like, again, if you leave too many open questions at the end of Metal Gear Solid 2, people are going to ask the sort of questions that go, all right, asshole, here's Guns of the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, all right, you've got some lingering questions. We're going to answer enough of them. And this also means that Ocelot burned the body of Solidus at the end of Act 3, which meant that Ocelot cremated the remains of a former American president. I love video games.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I was like, again, playing through it again, I was like, wait a minute, that's not Big Boss. I know that. That's Solidus. He burns him.
Yeah.
Ocelot gets to do the coolest stuff. Things I would never actually want to do, but like you watch it happen. It's like watching Brock Sampson in The Venture Brothers.
That was crazy. Like, I kind of liked it when that was Big Boss. Like when you thought that was Big Boss, to see, you know, again, talking about legacy, to see this, this, you know, this hero, this, you know, obviously player character from earlier, and to have someone that like everybody still cares about is just in like the worst shape. He's basically a skeleton.
Yeah.
With his consciousness trapped in the Patriot AI system and stuff. That at that point, that's Big Boss's, that's what Big Boss has to show for everything that he accomplished.
Yeah,
in a
much
way.
like Zero at the end.
Yeah, but then Big Boss comes in at the end too, and is just kind of like there to tell you how it all works. I'm not sure that I like really loved the fact that he came back at the end.
I liked that he died immediately.
That's true. He does die pretty quickly.
Like, I think there is something to because it's established by Eva and then by Big Boss himself. Snake was like, yes, his genetic clone, but never really his son.
Yeah. He always says, I think he says like, I always respected you as a soldier
and as a
never
man.
Thought of you as a son.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like, even when he greets him, it's like, it's been a long time, son, or maybe I should call you brother kind of thing. It's like, yeah, no, this familial idea is ridiculous. This is just a clone.
Yeah.
But he is still an individual. And so what Big Boss gives him at the end is not the closure of a parent, not a I'm proud of you, son, but it is the commanding officer, his original commanding officer as far as Foxhound goes, as far as Metal Gear goes, saying, you did good, kid.
Mm-hmm.
You did mission parameters, mission objectives completed. Now, here is shore leave. Off I go.
Yeah. I think if there is any character maybe that Snake would listen to that says, hey, go chill, take the rest of your life and like go relax. Maybe it is good that Big Boss is the one that's there to do that, because Snake might not take that to heart if it was Otacon or Campbell or someone else saying that to him.
Yeah. Even if it's not, even if Big Boss was never a father to Snake, there is that weird way of sometimes, whether parental or other authority figures from earlier days or something, it's just like, I don't know why, but when I hear it from them, it like gets to this, cuts through all the bullshit and gets to this one chord that's just, yeah, you're right. God, everyone's been telling me, and now suddenly they're all correct because you told me, you were the key.
Right. The person who is most like him is the one giving him that advice. So maybe that's why it's the only one he'll listen to. Yeah.
That's true. That's a great point. Like, how many of us have that level of like someone outside of ourselves that it's like, man, you're me. I mean, more literally, I'm you. And I'm sure you feel weird about that. So the fact that you're giving me helpful advice says a lot.
Mm-hmm. And that's you reminded me, I forgot about the original Metal Gear where he's the commanding officer in that game. So if you want to loop it all the way back to that, then there's even more history there. Because I guess for the rest of the time, for the rest of the Metal Gear Solid games, Big Boss has just been like this concept more than a person.
Right, an icon.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
you know, affecting everything, and so he was as much a real person as any of the AIs were. It's that kind of thing, and you know the ways that we have effects in the world.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
All right, so we've talked about Snake's journey. We've talked about some memorable stuff. Let's talk about the kind of overarching story of Metal Gear Solid 4, which is the Patriots and their plan and the obvious, need to prevent what they want, what it wants, the AI.
Yeah.
But the dangers of doing so recklessly, we'll say. So again, to kind of refresh, all the soldiers and probably most of like the civilian population as well has nanomachines, and the nanomachines are capable of controlling physiology, emotions, thoughts, how you sense and process the world around you. And the Patriots want to control all of that. So essentially, it would be losing free will for everybody on the planet, except for Drebin, who doesn't have the nanomachines. So he'll be cool, but everyone else would be screwed, I think.
Drebin has nanomachines in him. They prevent him from getting drunk.
Or maybe he has different nanomachines.
Everyone's got different nanomachines, but yeah, whether or not they're in the SOP or anything that.
I forget who it is. Someone, when there's one of those
Johnny.
SOP attacks, Johnny, that's right.
Akiba.
Johnny doesn't have them. Yes.
Yeah.
So Johnny will be alone to shit his pants or whatever it is he's doing with free of fear from control from the Patriots.
And when you think about the fact that him free but shitting his pants puts him on better footing than the rest of us, that really tells you what we're in for here.
That paints a picture. Yes.
Yes, it does.
So the Patriots AI, like the missing piece for its perfect war economy system, self-sustaining system, is to have this full control. So you got to stop it. You got to wipe out the AI. But they bring up the interesting point that what the Patriots wanted, what they talked about at the end of Metal Gear Solid 2, the control of information, the control of the media, basically control of what you're exposed to, plus control of all logistical systems, food, water, transportation, all of that stuff, means that just deleting the Patriot AI would cause society to collapse. That's what Campbell says would happen.
Right.
And that's kind of the danger of like, okay, sure, we'll go take out the AI. But what happens after you take out the AI?
There's a vacuum.
It sets up a weird situation where it's like, okay, so a lot of these situations in stories like this would ask the question, would life be better if you took this out? But in here, like the answer is yes, obviously you can't let this come to pass. It's too much.
Right.
So you can't have like this type of thing where it's like, would life be better under the tyrannical king than the power vacuum that would follow the tyrannical king, for another example, right?
Very much so, yeah.
This one just kind of like lets you think about it, but I think it's too strong for that to actually be a dilemma, a real dilemma.
Right. It's nothing that can be answered. You can produce opinions and ideas, but it's not as if, Konami is coming out with like, aha, we have solved this millennia old dilemma on things.
Yeah, right.
But that idea of, but what it does showcase, even before the notion of let's take out the Patriot AI, is what the Patriot AI has become. Cancerous. It's,
right.
Late stage capitalism is the villain yet again.
But a super advanced version of that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but it's getting into that like economical oligarchy idea of, as is explained during the big boss debrief at the graveyard.
Right.
The AI was handling a lot of things, and it realized the best way to control stuff, it was monoculture. It's most efficient to control through one avenue. So you can have the most growth there. Well, what's something that we can always keep have happen? War. Great.
Yeah.
Let's optimize war. Yeah. And so you can have those devoid from affecting actual people arguments of like, well, the ideal thing to do is to just do exactly what goes on here or something like it. And then you go, yes, that's a program. People are messy. People are not programs. And we can act like them sometimes, but we're not. You can't have a fully peaceful world. You will just have greater nuance for conflict. You can't have any of these things without. And thus, you cannot control free will. Where the Patriot AI was going was untenable, but probably an untenable that would destroy us.
Right.
Whereas the excising of it, there are those worries of what will come to fill it and what will be, but it's, as you put in your notes, like Naomi pointing out that the nation is an innocent child once more. She can forge her own destiny. The Metal Gear Solid in general is always been about free will. one of its central ideas, because yeah, you can do whatever you want in these games. You can explore, you can do crazy stuff, all of the stuff we've been talking about this whole episode. Fact of the matter is, you are still going to activate Metal Gear Rex because you're following your mission.
Mm-hmm.
You are still going to, like, there's many approaches you can have, but the story happens. It's not quite predestination, but it is a sort of back and forth of free will versus inevitability. Mm-hmm. And so there is that snapback back and forth. So I think that's also why Guns of the Patriots doesn't land on either one and just kind of goes, you know what? Sonny's just a really good hacker and was able to isolate some things. You know what? Right. Let's let that kid be awesome.
She is awesome. And that's the way that you are able to actually hack in, is with what she comes up with. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest flaw of this game's entire story, other than things that are so out there that you probably just shouldn't question why, Yeah. Like why is Vamp? Why is Vamp? Don't question why son. Vamp is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's again one of those where it's like, look, we can sit here and question why Vamp, but if you come to that point like, no, but seriously, why Vamp? We've gone too far.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we're playing here. These are action figures.
Right. But one of the things that I think you can question is this storyline in particular and where it goes. This is the one that feels Deus Ex Machina to me in a very bad and unsatisfying way. There has been conversation throughout the game about what will happen when you cut the Patriots out of this world logistical system. Mm-hmm. Starvation, lack of water, lack of medicine, things like that. These are all things that the game is like, this is going to happen when you cut these out. And then you cut them out anyway because you have to.
Right.
You can't let their plan come to pass.
You have to take the tumor out.
Right. And then at the end, they're just like, you know what? We found a way to salvage the water supply. Look at that. And it's it seems too clean to me, or they spent too little time explaining how. They literally just say, oh, by the way, we figured out how to save the food and water supply, so everything's going to be fine,
We're not here for UN meetings. We are here for shoot guns and sneak around. And
I suppose.
Well, and it's the kind of the thing, too. This was a very funny game to play in 2024, 2025. Mm-hmm. Hearing them talk about how sophisticated AI is and laughing my head off. I have a very low opinion of AI.
Yeah.
But also, the notion of playing the game after lockdown and COVID. Uh-huh. And what you're removing with the Patriots is infrastructure.
Yeah.
And the Patriots is sort of like, you need us. No, we need infrastructure. It doesn't have to be you.
Right.
And so lockdown showed us a lot of things, a lot of lessons that we quickly forgot as far as what is necessary, what is important, and what is emphasized, and what is lost when seemingly innocuous things suddenly go away.
Right.
So it actually leads me to believe further that taking out the Patriot AI like this could actually be this clean, certainly as far as we're seeing it. I don't know how long it would last, but...
Yeah. So, I believe that society would find a way to, rebuild the infrastructure, because, I think that despite the Patriots controlling stuff, I think there are enough people that know how the Patriots work that they would be able to rebuild infrastructure in a different way, or just kind of reconnect those broken connections or something like that.
You still have scientists and experts and financial minds and everything else. And so suddenly some of those don't have the same red tape that they once did.
Perhaps. They had just talked about it in such a way where they were like, the experts were saying this will be catastrophic if you cut this out. They had made it seem like, we can rebuild this, but it's going to take us time to rebuild this. And in that time, things are going to be so fucking dire that, again, you can't really question whether it's worth it to take the Patriots out, but it's going to be a disaster when they're gone. And then at the end, they're like, no, it's cool. It's not a disaster.
Well, was it the Patriots saying that you need us in terms of this will be a disaster if it goes away?
I forget who said it. I want to say it was Campbell who was talking about that.
That's true. It was Campbell very early on, but there again, it's the kind of thing of tradition is just stuff we agree upon. And systems and everything else, those are all just things where it's like all systems are traditions with high-minded self-image. So enough people say that Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, is a bad game. People think it is. They think it's the weakest one. Thus it is. Enough people say, if we don't have this AI, we're screwed. And maybe there's truth to it. Maybe there is truth to the strength or weakness of Guns of the Patriots as a Metal Gear Solid game, as a video game in general. But you've got to play it first. Yeah. And there's not everything you have to roll the dice on it. But, and I'm not saying you're wrong or right or anything else. I'm not answering the question. I'm, presenting the other view, I guess, of, how much of this is what we're told and how much of this is truth.
I just thought that this was a really interesting angle that they brought up to to kind of like close the loop they opened in Metal Gear Solid 2, which I think I love the discussion and conversation at the end of Metal Gear Solid 2 talking about the goals of the Patriots and stuff like that. And now we're at this this insane ending point, or it's gone so far out of control at this point. And I thought this was a really interesting, okay, we're going to do the thing that has to be done, but there's going to be horrible ramifications, consequences at the end of this, and we're going to have to live with those, and it's going to be a process. And then at the end, they're like, no, we don't, it's fine. Everything's fine. It's cool.
I mean, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. One, if there was that, there'd be a sequel. Yeah. That's too much of a sequel hook. And the closest thing to a sequel hook in my eyes was the kid that Sonny was playing with the Metal Gear Mark III. Sonny and Otacon had enough of a conversation off screen. That kid ran off with the Mark III. Who knows what's going to happen with that? That's the closest I saw. It's that, and think of who's telling us. Drebin. How much is truth? How much is glossing things over? How much is the ramblings of a showman who is drunk for the first time, possibly ever?
Yeah. I mean, it is tough to know how things actually are on the ground at the end, because you have the wedding scene and then you have the scene in the graveyard, and that's what you see. Right. And that's what is, told. You're kind of left to guess at what everything is actually like on the ground. So maybe things are harder than I was left to believe, and there is actual real work to be done. Right. I'm sure there is. It just felt like they're we need to close this loop. Yeah. Yes. And this is how we're doing it. Yeah.
We're already taking an hour, 20 minutes to close the loop here. We can't.
Yeah. How about another 50 minutes of cutscenes showing people struggling to, load trucks full of food and water? Nah.
Yeah. Look, I would love for there to be updated remakes and unification of a lot of the Metal Gear and Metal Gear Solid titles. I think we would have a much easier time with Kenneth Baker telling us about all of the things that happen in nuclear disposal if things loaded faster and were a little smoother and things like that. We don't need the equivalent of that at the end of our story.
Yeah.
Part of the story. And they lived happily ever after. But what about, and they lived happily ever after for another year. But they got a year of that. Do you get a year of that? This is what we've got. I'm not making another one of these games. And then they made several more.
Without him, yeah.
Without him. And not following Solid Snake.
Right. So I think if someone would have, maybe someone did, and I just didn't write it down. I don't remember. If there was someone had the tone of we did it, but there's a long road ahead of us.
I feel like Drebin felt like that, honestly.
Maybe he did, yeah. Anyway, the one way that they did show this, which I thought was great, is they had shown a couple times throughout the game when somebody turns off the SOP system, and it's all of those things that had been caught in the shield were suddenly released all at the same time. And all of the traumas, all of the negative emotions, all the memories overloads the soldiers who had them kind of shielded.
Yeah, they were always there, but it was just kind of isolated. How do you feel about that? I feel fine about it. They take that part away.
Right. And so it's they pull the plug and everything rushes in all at once, and it completely wrecks people.
And they said about 10% of all of those people, and there was a lot of people doing PMC stuff that were having severe symptoms and fallout from that, and withdrawal symptoms in addition to like shell shock and PTSD.
Right. And so that's the way that they do show the consequences of getting rid of the Patriots is there is a huge number of people who depended on the Patriot system whose lives are fucked now because of the removal of that. So
War
I did
has
they at least show you that. Yeah,
Yes.
It has consequences. What you did, at least the consequences are shown in that way. Yeah.
Yes. Life can continue for these people to deal with those consequences, but there are consequences.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. I cannot end this episode without talking about the fight against Liquid at the end because I thought it was really fucking cool how they did that.
Yeah. Oh my God. For something that is essentially two old men slap fighting, it felt epic.
On top of the submarine, the changes in music, the changes in the character model you're fighting against.
Yeah.
It was, again, like you can tell, and I have this perspective retroactively coming here late and knowing this is not the last Metal Gear Solid game, but you can tell they wanted this to be the last one. And for that purpose, the final showdown is a final showdown. We're going to take you back through the whole series. We're going to relive all the fights that you've done before, and we're going to wrap this up in a really epic way. It's really cool.
Yeah, a lot of important people in Big Boss's missions in life and Liquid's missions in life fall throughout this game. Like the finality on that as well. Like all of the snakes are dealing with this. And so Revolver Ocelot is such a fascinating character.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they signpost and hint throughout this encounter that like how in control is Revolver the entire time.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he Kiryu Kazuma's the trench coat off.
Yeah.
And like I associate that with him where it's like, okay,
it's
look,
a Yakuza fight for sure.
Extremely. And like most of my experience with the series is the two Ichiban Like a Dragon titles. So very much the idea of like, this is just two old men wailing on each other. I'm entranced. But, and look, a big leather trench coat, I believe you can pull off in one go, reaching across your chest. What Kiryu does with this whole suit, I don't know. They probably teach you that in the initiations while they're giving you the tattoos. Regardless, he pulls the trench coat off, and his arm's prosthetic. It's not a grafted. It's not a graft. It is a prosthetic arm. So, Metal Gear Solid 2, I live on through this arm. Like, but does he?
Yeah.
Huh. His name changes throughout the fight, while also, when you're at that point, you have fought the Beauty and the Beast Corps. You have fought Vamp. You have fought Metal Gear Ray. You have made it through that microwave hallway, and you can't make me do any of this again. Yeah. I'm like, you need this fight. You need to win. You need to survive. You need to get through it. The desperation is real. And the CQC of it is really fun. Like, even the way that it comes around and the life bars show up and everything, it for just a moment is unmistakably a fighting game. And then it's Metal Gear again.
Yeah. Yep. When I saw this pop up, I was very like, oh shit, here we go. Because I remember, I think the final boss fight in Metal Gear Solid 1 is legitimately terrible to play. And so I was like, saw this and I was like, oh boy. But luckily it's like, oh, no, it's actually fine here.
I think, again, if you do a remake of Metal Gear Solid 1 and you introduce CQC, that fight with Liquid could be bananas.
It could be awesome. Yeah.
Right. Could be.
Could be.
But we see the potential of it here. And like there was real back and forth. It didn't feel super cheap in either direction. There were fun cinematic moments, and I started to get the feel and the rhythm of what was going on. I was countering and being countered. I only did a little bit of CQC. One of the other reasons I'm excited to play through Guns of the Patriots again is I want to indulge in CQC and get the feel for those again. Because again, playing Snake Eater, I was holding people up. I was sneaking people around. I was doing the throwdowns. It was fun. And so doing that and re-engaging with that and then fighting Liquid Ocelot again, I'm excited about that culmination. Like, yeah, I think you're right. That fight is, however you slice it, a culmination.
Yeah. It's like they thought of, okay, callbacks to the confrontation at the end of Metal Gear Solid 1, a callback to, I think most of these end with like some kind of one-on-one duel with the, the villain that you're most
Liquid,
intimate
Solidus,
with in a way.
the boss. Yeah. And that's something interesting too, where, well, aside from the Solidus fighting the frickin' powers, the Lex Luthor power suit that he's got, everyone else, you play this game where there are supernatural elements throughout. There's utterly wild things that people can do. And they usually, and you've fought, tanks, nuclear equipped walking battle tanks. You fought squads of soldiers. You fought all these things. And it's usually one-on-one. It, hand to hand. It is the basis of all combat. Only a fool trusts his life to a weapon.
This one comes down to, like you said, too, you get to the point in the fight where everyone's exhausted. They're just, kind of half punching each other. They collapse on top of each other at the end of it.
They got nothing but haymakers in them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It really feels like, it feels like when they both fall down, whoever lands on top of the other one, that's the winner, regardless of whatever else happened in the fight.
Yeah. By that fourth phase, after you've gotten the flashbacks and you're seeing more and more of Ocelot come out. Also, the fact that there's something to be said for, look, most modern video games use motion capture, but I think most of motion capture in Metal Gear Solid, because of many choices that have been made. And the fact that the motion capture actor for Ocelot and Snake Eater did that funny little, you're pretty good. And it's ridiculous. It's goofy as hell. And it's great. And it's Ocelot. Because it's Ocelot doing it, it's awesome. Yeah. And so when it comes back again, you're like, oh, it means something. It comes too. And it signifies so much more than just that. Yeah. Yes, there is the memification of you're pretty good, kept you waiting, huh? War has changed. But when it gets past those points, and you are just throwing ragged haymakers, I'm slamming the R1 button to get, anywhere here, because I see how much windup is required. And I don't want Liquid to get a shot in on me. I don't want Ocelot to hit me at all. So I feel the same desperation of mashing triangle to get through the microwave hallway. I'm like, no, this ends here. This has to end here. Come on.
The analogs, as you just painted the picture of the end of the fight, the analogs to every final boss fight in a Yakuza game are so strong. It's exactly the same situation where the final punch is the last punch you could have physically thrown, you know?
Again, how do you kill a badass? You got to bring him to the limit.
Yeah. So, I love, again, I just want to restate, I love cycling through the music in that fight, cycling through the visuals of the characters, every single way that they could have taken you through the journey of the previous games in that final fight. They did it. And so, like we said, Kojima gets a lot of shit, and for this, the long cutscenes and the expository dialogue and all of that stuff, and legitimate criticisms in some cases, for sure. And other things that he gets shit for that I didn't really find in this game. He has a sexist side that I didn't think really showed up in this game a whole lot.
I would say he's very horny.
Yeah. It's a conversation for another time. It's not really relevant for this game.
I would say, Metal Gear Solid is a lot of a lot. So the important thing is context and finding what you want of it. Well, I don't like that. Then don't do it. Sometimes you don't have a choice, but often it's just, there you go.
Yeah. So, there are the criticisms. What I'm getting at is if you want to wrap up a story in one boss fight and use every single available, every time you've said use every part of the console, I've thought use every part of the buffalo. Kojima uses every part of the buffalo in the final boss fight.
That's exactly where I was pulling from.
Only he would. Yeah.
Yeah. He thinks of parts of the buffalo that people completely forget are there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. He's discovering new muscles, new organs, and everything. Yeah.
It's like, you mean you don't use them like this? No.
Yeah.
Who would think to do that? I've been doing it for 10 years.
Yep.
Okay. Exactly. It's a nose to tail kind of approach to game design, to legacy, to Saga. And it's what makes it such a replayable game for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it makes me excited to continue with the series. I have Peace Walker next that I'm going to play, and then 5 after that. And then after that, I'm sure, I've heard Acid's fun, so I'm going to check that out. I like card games. So
it's fun. It's very different. So yeah, I think taking it after you've gotten through the main saga is very much the right idea. Play the side games after.
Right, exactly. So this has been awesome going through Metal Gear Solid 4. I knew we had a long one ahead of us, so I thank you for sticking with me through it all. And I know what you're about to say, which is that we could do another 3 hours. There is a lot more that we didn't talk about at all, including several boss fights, several minor storylines. There's so much here. I think we hit the important stuff, though.
I think so, too. I think also I am going to clean up the spelling of my notes here because I was typing them on my phone with swipe typing, and so sometimes, Google Docs does weird things, but I think do a little bit of cleanup. I'm going to send them to you. I want you to see where my brain went here. Yeah. I don't know. I don't often want to publish my scrawlings, but I want to share them with friends just as no, as long as this episode clocked in shorter than the cutscenes of the game, I feel like we did a good job.
That's true. We have about 6 hours left to fill then, so.
We're pretty good. All right, well, let's talk about some of the downloadable content. I mentioned the podcast that you can download for it. Yeah. I'm going to play through. I'm going to listen to that. We'll talk about this later. It's fine.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate, again, you taking the time. I appreciate your expertise. I appreciate the conversation. This has been an awesome episode, so thanks, Geoff.
Dave, thank you so much for having me on here. Again, I cannot put into words what a privilege, a joy, and a gift this has been, getting to talk about this with you, getting the chance to really delve into a series I love and talk about it.
Yeah,
so thank you.
I appreciate it. Yeah. For this one, and then the episode we did before talking about Metroid, which is another thing I know you had a lot of thoughts about. So always appreciate it. So at the end of the episode, I will give the call for everyone. If you're still listening, still watching, I appreciate you. You are my hero. Please check down in the show notes for links to Geoff on social media and the Fun and Games podcast. Great stuff and highly recommended. So please check it out. And thanks again for listening all the way to the end, especially on a beefy one like this. Thank you. And tune in next week for the next game to come out of the backlog.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun, whatever fun is to you.
I'm Geoff Moonen,
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
and on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there, so we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Geoff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
Hello, my name is Andrew.
I'm Dylan.
And I'm Aubrey.
And
we are your friendly neighborhood gamers.
Our podcast aims to cover the world of video games from the perspective of the average gamer. Whether you casually play games on your phone, have a high KD in Call of Duty, or you're somewhere in between, we believe that makes you a gamer, and our show is for you.
Since our podcast started in 2022, we have done deep dive episodes on over 40 games, including The Witcher 3, Diablo 4, Marvel Snap, Cult of the Lamb, and more.
We've also discussed a wide variety of topics such as video game music, toxicity in gaming, cozy games, games based on Star Wars, and video game genre definitions.
Additionally, it's our goal to use our show to shine a light on other awesome creators by inviting them onto our podcast for interviews. We've had the pleasure of talking to podcasters, streamers, cosplayers, musicians, authors, and Donkey Kong record holders.
If any of that sounds interesting to you, we would love for you to check out our show. You can find us on all of the podcast platforms, YouTube, and on our website, fngamers.com.